All right, good evening, everyone. Oh, so we'll start the live stream first. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's council meeting. First of all, council would like to acknowledge the Wadawurrung people as the traditional owners of the lands, waterways and skies on which we meet tonight. We pay our respects to the elders, past, present and emerging, and we acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of the greater Geelong community today, because we are one community. Now, this meeting is being broadcast on the internet, and the recording of the meeting will be published on council's website. Now, my name is Trent Sullivan, and as the Mayor for the City of Greater Geelong, I will be chairing tonight's March Council meeting. So welcome to City Hall, and a warm welcome to all the community members that are watching the live stream online. It is fantastic to be joined by so many residents. That's a core part of what we do here. And we are looking forward to getting to your questions during our Q&A segment. Now, firstly, to the elephant in the room is the Collingwood scarf that I am wearing this evening. To friends, family, my fellow councillors, I have not jumped ship. I'm still 100% committed to the Geelong Cats. This is an unfortunate byproduct of a friendly wager I made with the Lord Mayor of Melbourne, Sally Capp, who is a passionate Collingwood supporter. In round one, her team, the Pies, beat our beloved Cats here. So as a result of that, I now have to wear the Magpies scarf in this meeting, which is very kindly provided by Councillor Murray. Now, in other important news, there's been many things going on in the city this week. We are playing host to members of the UNESCO Cities of Design Network who are here as delegates to our fine city. This 5-day program will see delegates from many nations around the world, including Japan, South Korea, Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, the USA, Scotland, Lithuania, Denmark, Belgium, Canada, and France, all here engaging in discussion and sharing knowledge across the latest international developments of design and the projects they are undertaking. The network will be identifying opportunities for collaboration on this topic. This presents an amazing opportunity for Geelong to showcase its rich history in design to the world. And we'll be engaging their councils for the immediate and long-term future for our region. It was also pleasing to see the Taste of Central Geelong launched last week. This is a festival that will be running through until this Sunday coming, April the 2nd. So I encourage you all to get out and enjoy some of the fine delicacies of what our region has to offer. Now, we do have a number of questions from the gallery, so I'll get started with all the procedural motions I have to do, and then we'll get right to your questions. So, councillors, I'll be asking for a strict adherence to speaking time limits this evening. I ask that Councillor Asher be noted as apology for tonight's meeting, as Councillor Asher is seeking a leave of absence, which will be granted retrospectively from the 20th of March until the 6th of April ahead of us. This is inclusive timeframes. Councillors, can I please have a mover? Councillor Mason, seconded. Councillor Nelson. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? That's carried. Are there any apologies or leaves of absence to be noted this evening? We're moving on to declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest in relation to tonight's agenda item? Councillor Grisbeck?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Number 2 and 5.3. Thank you.
Item 2.2 and item 5.3. I myself will be declaring a conflict with item 5.2 as well. Any other conflicts that arise throughout the meeting with the council group, please make them known. Now, may I have a mover and a seconder to confirm the minutes of the council meeting held on the 28th of February 2023? Harwood, seconded. Councillor Cadwell, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? That's carried. Now, the next agenda item is public question and submission time. It is specifically available for questions and submissions rather than a forum for discussion. In accordance with our policy, 45 minutes is set aside for question time, providing for each person to address the council for 3 minutes per question or submission, with no more than 2 questions asked or submissions made per person. A maximum time limit of 3 minutes applies to each question asked or submission made. questions and submissions which were provided in writing prior to the meeting will be considered first. After this, if time permits, members from the gallery will be given an opportunity to ask a question or make a submission. However, if it is in relation to an agenda item, councillors won't be able to provide you with an answer, as you'll be hearing us discussing and voting on it very shortly. I note that there are some questions relating to an agenda on tonight's items, or an item on tonight's agenda, which are directed to councillors, being around Amendment C339GGEE, flood zones and overlays, further review of LARA overlay maps and submissions. As this item will be considered on tonight's agenda, councillors will be unable to provide any questions or answer any questions directly during the public question time. For those who have pre-submitted questions but are not present tonight, responses to your questions have been published on the council's website and will also be emailed to you directly. It's also important to note that councillors have received these questions and read them prior to the meeting. Now, for tonight's meeting, we have received pre-submitted questions from 23 community members, and I'm just going to go through the list of names and the topics, just so they are on the public record, and then I'll be asking the names I've read out to come up one by one after I've read all the names and all the items. So we have questions or submissions from Donna Parsons in relation to Churnside Park and maintenance of Norseman's Reserve, from Kelly Lavelle, bike lanes, Miranda, Seagull Paddock main bridge replacement, Michael Hellman, Amendment C339, flood overlays and zones, LARA flood study, Christopher Bates, community wellbeing and aged care, Marilyn Petit, LARA traffic management plan, Sandy Creek road improvements, Barry White, on behalf of LARA Care Group, Seven Dip Sanctuary, LARA flood study and Amendment C339, flood overlays and zones, Helen Clark, Stage 5 of Balmoral Quay development, Rippleside timeline, Jess Butler, Doolittle Reserve in Armstrong Creek, Francis Louis Gartland, Council's Community Garden Guidelines, licences, Katerina Larissa Izdebskia for tree removal and replacement, Roslyn Road, Tim Matthews, Amendment C339, flood overlays and zones, LARA flood study, Lionel McWilliam, Amendment C339, flood overlays and zones, Louis DeCoca, pedestrian safety in South Valley Road, Jean Nell DeCoca, tree management within the city, Jenna Wade, promoting alternative transport and community engagement on public infrastructure, Bill Marshall, planning committee minutes, accessibility, Felicity Dales, smart cities, Gary Orenick, granting of fee waivers to constituents and public surveillance, Sam Smith, Balmoral Quay, changes to Rippleside Urban Design Guidelines, June 2000, and Rippleside Comprehensive Development Plan, February 2000, Frank Chalifor, planning requirements, special building overlays, Vanessa Whittam, tree register development, Matthew Bevan, representing residents of Lakeside Boulevard, for Amendment C339, flood overlays and zones, LARA flood study drainage. May I please have a show of hands of whose names I've read out indicatively? Excellent, thank you. I will be going back through that list one at a time. When I say your name, could you please come forward, sit at the bench here we have at the front, say your name into the microphone, and then once you start talking, the time will be yours. Please, we welcome you to the front. There's definitely no need to be nervous from the council group at all. So the first submitter we have was Donna Parsons. Is Donna here this evening? Donna Parsons? Not. Kelly Lavelle? Good evening, Kelly.
Hello.
How are you?
Right.
Excellent.
First of all, just thank you to the council for opening Cardinia Pool all year round. I'd be there right now if I wasn't here. All it needed was a pandemic to keep that pool open all year round. So thank you. So my question is in regards to Central Geelong and the bike lanes on the roads. If you ride a bike through Central Geelong, you will experience a bike lane, and then as you continue along crossing an intersection, for example, travelling down Yarra Street or up Priory Street, the bike lane just disappears and then you need to merge with traffic. So my question is, why can't, in the central Geelong area, why can't we have uniform and comprehensive bike lanes? I rode here tonight, I'm confident to ride, but it really is a deterrent to other people to ride in central Geelong. So that's the first question. The second question is, what plans does the City of Greater Geelong have for uniform and comprehensive bike lanes, particularly given the potential for the population, residential population, to increase in central Geelong?
Thank you very much, Kelly. I'll pass over to our Director of City Planning and Economy, Gareth Smith, for a response.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Kelly, for coming along to read out your question. Historically, most roads in central Geelong, as in many other places, have not included cycle lanes or have included painted lanes that are not physically separated from motor vehicle traffic. Decisions around the allocating of road space usually require some form of trade-off between different priorities, including footpath width, on-street parking, road capacity, etc. Going forward, these decisions, including where road spaces may need to be reallocated from things like on-street parking to provide bicycle lanes, will be informed by the state government's movement and place framework that I think they released last year. The city will engage with impacted stakeholders making these kinds of decisions. And in reference to question 2, the Central Geelong Planning Framework, as you're probably aware, was released recently by the Minister. It has an objective to provide safe and direct connected cycle routes in Central Geelong. This includes the provision of separated bicycle lanes on strategic cycle corridor routes such as Mallet Street, Swanston Street and parts of Western Beach Road. The City and the Department of Transport and Planning will work together to deliver those routes. But I must also add, there is also a council resolution will be also reviewing the bicycle network program over in the near future as well, which actually form council strategic direction on bicycle paths going forward. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Gareth. I believe Councillor Deputy Mayor Aiken would also like to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Look, what the officer's response doesn't include is the most recent decision that Council made, which was in our Council chamber, which was a unanimous vote of this Council, to actually undertake a total review of our primary bike network. And actually from that review, we would clearly support then strategic bike lanes and other active transport routes throughout the city. Until we actually get that review completed, it is rather academic, what roads are bikes, what roads aren't bikes, because the council's actually committed through that endorsed resolution to actually look strategically at how we can actually build the best bike lanes we can in Geelong, not just putting bike lanes in every single road, as appears to be the current strategy. It seems to be piecemeal. It isn't done on a holistic basis, and that's why the council group requested that strategic review. Yeah.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Aiken. Gareth certainly did touch on the strategic approach review we're doing now, but that is certainly something that was led by the council chamber. Thank you, Kelly. Is Miranda here this evening? I have a question from Miranda. Oh, move on to Michael Hellman. How are you, Michael? Good evening. If I can just get you to state your name when you're ready, your time will be yours.
Michael Hellman, Mayor, councillors, thanks for listening to me tonight. I asked a specific question on this matter at the council meeting on 27 September, and the answer provided by Mr Smith was a generic response to other similar questions on the night. I do not understand then, and since looking and studying it since, I do not understand what the flood overlay achieves. Given the heavy rain in the months of October and November, where only one house in Lara was inundated, while large areas of Geelong, Corio, etc. were flooded, why is a flood overlay being considered for Lara when there was no evidence of widespread flooding suggested by the flood study, and in fact Lara has not had a flood event since the 8th of December 1988 because Council carried out flood mitigation improvements to Hovels Creek after this event. At the September meeting, council meeting, it was reported that only 5% of residents had had their concerns directly addressed by council officers. There was also criticism of the community consultation process involved in the study. However, officers continued to refuse requests to conduct a public meeting. Where concerned residents could have the flood overlay explained in simple terms with maps that were actually readable and the potential financial implications addressed. Councillors Aitken and Harwood referred the matter back to officers to rectify. Why have council officers refused to date to conduct a community meeting to inform residents? And I urge the council to refuse the decision on approving this proposed amendment C399, which is considered tonight until a public information meeting as requested is convened. I had a look at the documentation today on the council agenda, and I actually could see a map for the first time, and I did identify what is my place, I think, and I'm still not certain whether it's in or out, but the house next door to me, which is exactly the same level off the road pavement as mine, it's got a red mark around it, so I presume it's exempt. So I'm just still totally confused as I was back in September.
Thank you, Michael. As noted at the start of this meeting, councillors will not be able to answer you directly, but we've all heard your comments and they are absolutely duly noted. I'll throw to Gareth for a preliminary response. Thank you, Gareth.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Michael, for coming along. Before I read out the answers to the questions, certainly we're happy to catch up with you as soon as possible to make sure you're clear on the map and how it affects your property as well after the council decision tonight, because that has an impact on that as well. In regarding to question one though, the primary purposes of the flood overlays is to trigger a planning permit for building and works in areas that are potentially flood prone. This allows floor levels to be set above the flood level for new or rebuilt dwellings. The mapping of the flood overlays is from modelling of a 1% annual exceedance probability rainfall event, or equivalent to often people refer to as 1 in a 100-year flood. The rainfall records during recent storms in Lara that referred to indicate it's a 2 to 5% occurrence that actually during that period. So it wasn't a 1%. So what Lara recently witnessed wasn't what we're planning towards. And what we're required to plan towards is the 1%. These weather events that I said you experienced aren't indicative of what we're planning towards. The Lara flood study, which was prepared by expert consultants, is the basis for the overlay maps, and the city is confident it represents the likelihood of inundation at that 1%. The city is required to rely on that sort of scientific-based data as evidence is not reliable indicator of areas that are subject to some of these events when there's not recent records of it. To add to question 2, it is not accurate to say 5% of residents had their concerns directly addressed by council officers. All 561 submissions to the amendment was read and summarised into themes for the December 21 council meeting report. A further 50 of the more complex submissions were further reviewed in detail as part of the July 22 review, which went to the September 22 council meeting. A further review, which was completed after the September council meeting, looks at properties only marginally affected by the special building overlay at Lara, and the city, or as officers, we're recommending further properties be removed from tonight's agenda. Community meetings were held when the Lara flood study was being prepared, and the city was engaged with all affected landowners by directly notifying them of the proposed overlays as part of the exhibition of the amendment, provided ongoing updates to submitters. The city also held one-on-one sessions in Lara prior to the September meeting. Subject to the council resolution tonight, the city intends to conduct an information centre session for submitters in the lead up to the panel hearing, particularly to help communities prepare for that. And then question 3, it is up to the council decision tonight. However, if council resolves to refer this amendment to an independent panel, the city officers are recommending, like I said, an information session be conducted to assist the community group, sharing further information, but help them prepare for a panel process if they wish to participate. Thank you again.
Thank you, Michael.
Can I just have one last thing? I still don't understand what the overlay does to protect me from a 1 in a 100-year flood. I don't understand that part of it. I don't see how it protects anybody. I don't think it does anything. So
Thank you, Michael.
I
I
look forward to
understand.
engaging with you.
Thank you, Michael.
What about the 5%?
I understand. We're not taking, everybody will have their chance to come speak up. We're not taking yelling from the audience. Thank you. Christopher Bates, please. How are you, Christopher? If you state your name, your time will be yours.
Thank you, Trent. Yes, I'm Christopher Bates. How does our council feel about a hope to see as many people as possible live for as long as is possible, being as happy as possible and as healthy as possible?
Great question. I'll defer to our Director of Community Life, Robin Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor Sullivan, and thanks for your question, Christopher. Council invests strongly in health and wellbeing for people of all ages through its delivery of the Municipal Public Health and Wellbeing Plan, which is integrated into the Council plan. This ensures all areas across Council contribute to the health and wellbeing, which is monitored and reported on. Council supports an ambition for our older people to live long, well and happy lives, and to that end has undertaken significant community engagement to develop the Positive Ageing Strategy and Action Plan 2022 to 2025. The City has also established an Ageing Well Advisory Committee to oversee the development of the strategy and the implementation of the action plan. Year one actions include future opportunities for senior citizens clubs, promotion of ways older people can live at home for longer, and the embedding of age-friendly cities guidelines into urban design projects and streetscapes. Council's positive ageing grants also might be of interest to you or people that you're interacting with. This grant opened on Friday the 25th of March with the aim to improve social connection, promote mental health and wellbeing and increase physical activity. The grants are guided by the Positive Ageing Strategy 2021 to 2047, which was adopted by Council in November 2021.
Robin.
Thank you. And the second question, which you may have answered, but I'll just read it if that's
Please.
helpful. Second question, how does our council feel about the vision for aged care in Australia that every older Australian is able to live well with dignity and independence as part of their community and in a place of their choosing, with a choice of appropriate and affordable support and care services as and when they need them?
Thank you, Christopher. So yes, our positive ageing strategy does guide some of that, but Council supports a vision for aged care in Australia that every older Australian is able to live well with dignity and independence as part of their community and in a place of their choosing, with the choice of appropriate and affordable support and care services as they need them. The design and implementation of the aged care system lies with the federal government, which is responding to the recommendations of the Aged Care Royal Commission, and this has been a bipartisan position. The early indications are that there will be further announcements in the May federal budget about the changes to the aged care system from the 1st of July 2024, after which time the details of the new system will be confirmed, designed with and to improve quality, choice and control as per the government's intentions. The City's community care clients are also surveyed regularly, which provides opportunities for them to provide feedback and suggestions on the services they receive. Thanks for your questions, Christopher.
Thank you.
Marilyn Petit.
Hello all, I'm standing in for my mother-in-law, Marilyn. My name is Katrina Roundtree. Hello. I think I've got an easy one. The Lara Traffic Management Plan identified development and sealing of Sandy Creek Road as a short-term development priority. Now this reflected the need to establish an alternative truck route, principally for heavy haulage quarry trucks to travel north to Little River Ripley Road and through to Bacchus Marsh. Now this would divert trucks from Lara township, which makes complete sense. Of course, Windermere Road was seen as a short-term option while Sandy Creek Road was being developed, leading to my question. Will the council implement improvements to Sandy Creek Road as agreed to in the Lara traffic plan as a matter of urgency, please, commencing on in the 2023 to 24 budget period?
Rowena. I'll throw to our Acting Director of City Services, David Greaves, please.
On behalf of Marilyn, I note that this is a very similar question to one raised at the previous council meeting around Sandy Creek Road, and the city confirms that Sandy Creek Road resealing and upgrade works were endorsed as part of the council-approved Lara Traffic Management Plan, which is a 10-year plan between 2019 and 2029. Funding has not been allocated in the current budget to complete the works. However, the city will continue to look for external opportunities from other levels of government or other bodies to complete the works as part of that program. The draft 23-24 Geelong City of Greater Geelong budget will be tabled at council meeting on the 26th of April this year. This will be followed by a 28-day community engagement period, during which time people can make submissions. All submissions will be considered and heard, if requested by the submitter, by submission panel review on the 7th of June 2023. So if Marilyn would like to submit for that piece of work to be included or considered in the budget, we welcome her to do that.
Of course, we are in the middle of forming that budget that you mentioned, 23-24. We can't comment on any certain outcomes of it, but I believe Marilyn's urgency and wishes has been noted by the council group. Thank you. Barry White for Lara Care Group. How are you, Barry?
Very well, thanks, Mayor. Mayor and councillors, good to see you again. This is becoming a bit of a habit, but that's the name of the game.
To get you to say your name yourself, your time will be yours.
Barry White, Lara Care Group. I have two questions. The first one concerns developments at Serendip Sanctuary, and I must say our relationship and discussions with Parks Victoria are not proceeding well, but this was dealt with in detail last September in Lara, so I'm not going to go over those issues. But a key issue is the business case mentioned in the You Yangs Precinct Master Plan. We believe that this is a key to understanding Parks Victoria's decision making for the sanctuary and really underpins the plan, and is referred to specifically in the strategic plan. Much of the strategic direction in the master plan has been driven by a project control group. There was no community involvement, but council, as representing the community, was involved. My question is, will council provide details of its involvement in the master plan, including any references to removal of wildlife, and a copy of the business case which was used to guide it?
Thank you, Barry. I'll defer to our Director of City Planning and Economy for the answer of question number one. Gareth?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Barry, and for your continued advocacy for Serendip. Council had city staff representation on the project control group for the You Yangs Precinct Strategic Master Plan and business case. Council was also connected to the project via its partnership with Tourism Greater Geelong and the Ballerine, which also had a staff member on the project control group. The questions around the specific details of the outcomes and how the project control group process has impacted decisions on the master plan really need to be addressed to Parks Victoria, I guess, as the owner of that process and the owner of the project.
Thank you for that response, but really it doesn't go to the heart of my question, and that is council was involved. They must know what recommendations were made to the strategic plan, and they must be aware that a business case was actually prepared. Now, at this stage, we have put in a freedom of information request to Parks Victoria, but given that council was also represented, we think it's a reasonable question to ask on behalf of the community.
No, I very much understand the question, Barry. However, I gather at the moment that since, whilst we may have representation in this group, we cannot release information that we are not the owners of, which I imagine that Parks Vic are. I may not be 100% certain on that, but that's something which I imagine may be the case. However, we can defer on that as well. I thought actually Councillor Aiken would say a few words.
Barry, I sympathise with you. I actually don't like the answer either to this one because it actually doesn't respond to the question at all. The question actually was, will council now provide details of its involvement in the master plan? And the response actually says, questions about specific details of the outcome you need to go to Parks Victoria. You're not actually asking about the outcome. So with Councillor Gresbeck's consent, I'm happy to follow up that question further with the officers because their response does not reflect the question that you've asked at all. Yeah.
Yep. Anyone, officers and people can follow up these questions. With that, Barry, you might move on to question 2.
We appreciate that response. Question 2 concerns the Lara flood study and Amendment C339. Michael Hellman's already, I think, explained very well the lack of detail that was requested last September, and also the fact that we don't believe a great deal of progress has been made in consulting with the community, as suggested. I won't go over all of the comments that Michael has already mentioned, but I just make the point that this is a matter that's not of simply a concern for a handful of people. This is community-wide. This has community-wide implications, and all affected residents deserve to be properly informed about what has been involved, and they haven't. At a time, we believe, when households are facing increasing cost pressures, this proposal has the potential to add further development, regulatory and insurance costs from the application of overlays and other requirements which have not been justified. And a couple of additional points. I couldn't find my own property on the map. In fact, there was a heading of the map, I think, over the area that would have covered my property, so I've got no idea where we stand in relation to this. I can't understand the colour codes used for identification of the 4 separate, amendments, zones. So that needs to be clarified. The report and the maps in particular are confusing. There's no clarity at all of why properties have been exempted in some cases, and neighbouring properties, and I'm talking about some next door, have not, which doesn't sound logical. And the idea of a forum only after we've reached this stage and then only available prior to an independent panel hearing, we believe is non-acceptable. So we would like this to be rethought again. We believe that the amendment, until an open public meeting is held, should be rejected, and we call on councillors and ask councillors to consider the financial implications with its application and reject the proposal tonight.
I will take that as a submission. Thank you very much for it. Helen Clark. Is Helen Clark here this evening? How are you, Helen? Just get you to say your name and your time is yours.
Helen Clark.
Thank you.
And may I say, as a relative newcomer from Darwin, how much I'm enjoying living in this beautiful city.
Spectacular.
And I'm living in Rippleside. Can Council please advise when the proposed amendment to enable Stage 5 of the Balmoral Quay development, Rippleside, will be released for public consultation, and the timeframe and process for that consultation? Reasonable time is required to ensure broad, informed and considered community input.
Good question, Helen. I'll ask our Director of City Planning and Economy, Gareth Smith, for an answer.
Thank you, Mayor, and welcome to the City, Helen. The City is currently awaiting state government authorisation to proceed with the amendment. However, the City expects it to go on public exhibition in May 2023. So the previous Council report, the Council endorsed to seek the approval of the Minister to release it. We're awaiting that approval. The normal process will be they are on exhibition and open for submissions for a 1-month period. All nearby landowners and residents will be notified and notices placed in local newspapers.
But can I just confirm that it's a 1-month period?
Yeah, that's when the exhibition period is out for, in the public exhibition, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Jess Butler. Is Jess Butler here this evening? Yep, hello. How are you, Jess? Excellent. If I can just get you to say your name when you're ready, your time will be yours.
Butler. The description of the Doolittle Reserve in Armstrong Creek on the City of Great Geelong website describes this site as a rare grassy woodland gem consisting of vegetation that is classified as endangered in Victoria. It is also the home of many animals and has significant value as a cultural site to the Wadawurrung people. Despite this, City of Greater Geelong have allowed Doolittle to be absorbed into the Armstrong Creek development. This has resulted in significant damage to and mistreatment of the site, including people leaving rubbish there, dogs regularly off lead, bikes being ridden over the endangered grassland, areas used as bike jumps, and the reserve being used as a thoroughfare for those who live in the surrounding area. I have been raising these issues with councillors and council staff for 3 years and nothing has been done. In November last year, signs were finally erected around protecting the area. However, this is unlikely to be enough to stop this inappropriate and destructive use of the site. What else will City of Greater Geelong do to protect the endangered vegetation, Aboriginal cultural heritage and animals that live in Doolittle?
Thank you, Jess. Your passion for this reserve is certainly clear. I'll go to David, Acting Director of City Services, for a response to what's done to date.
Yes, for your question and your enthusiasm for Doolittle Reserve. So as we can see, extensive development has occurred around Armstrongs Creek over the past decade, which has resulted in a significant increase in people visiting and utilising Doolittle Reserve and a subsequent increase in impact to its natural and cultural values. The City's Nature Reserve team, which manages Doolittle Reserve, has a work plan in place to identify threats to the reserve and prioritise management action. The City acknowledges the cultural significance of Doolittle Reserve and regularly seeks advice from the Wadawurrung traditional owners, Aboriginal Corporation, regarding management and infrastructure works within the reserve. Some actions that the City has implemented over the years to protect the reserve's cultural and natural value include revegetation of areas on the north side of the reserve and creek line to provide a vegetation buffer and increased habitat values, installation of the reserve naming and regulation signing, as you mentioned, weed and rabbit control programs, regular litter removal, re-establishment of the fence line on the northern boundary of the reserve from the open space area to restrict pedestrian activity, through the development processes, securing of direct seeding of native grasslands along Stewart's Lane to better protect and enhance the conservation values of the reserve, locking of an alternative entry point into the reserve to reduce those off-track pedestrian traffic movements, review of dog regulations for the reserve as part of the Dogs in Public Places policy review, and the City's Environment Ranger is to begin running patrols within the reserve in the future. So the City encourages all residents and users of the reserve to report any issues via our customer service, which is either via phone or website, and these will be referred to officers to investigate and arrange any actions as appropriate. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Jess. Francis Louis Gartland. How are you, Francis? Did you say your full name? Your time will be yours.
My name is Frances Louise Gartland, and you mentioned earlier that it is in regards to a community garden. Recently we've had talks with the licensing group, and it came up then that we don't come under the community garden and that they were going to review it. We don't have a fence, we don't have all the paraphernalia that a community garden has, and I just wanted to make that clear. My preamble was that the Grovedale Community Orchard at Perrott Street has no fence and can be walked through and appreciated, just like the activities of friends of Warn Ponds Creek, who, like us, have planted trees and bushes. Unlike us, they do not pay a licensing fee. We recently had a meeting with COG Licensing Department, who wrote up notes of the meeting, and these notes appeared to exclude most of what we had put forward in regard to this matter. We have consistently been told we are under the Council's community garden policy and thus have to pay. When we pointed that out, as I mentioned earlier, we were told that we didn't come under this policy and they would be writing one soon. A councillor was prepared to speak at the meeting on our behalf, but the councillor was told that this matter did not concern councillors. Firstly, my question is, I would like to know if anyone else besides the licensing department will have a say in the new community orchard policy, which is what I know they're going to obviously get the community garden policy out, and somehow I don't know what they're wanting to do, but the word was review, so I imagine that's what it is. Secondly, will the councillors have any say in the negotiation of our licensing agreement, or will matters such as this be left to the staff at council?
Thank you very much for your questions, Francis. We'll go to our Director of Customer and Corporate Services, Bryce Presser, for an answer. Bryce.
Your questions, Francis. The city does not have a community gardens policy, and there is no plan to create a policy. The city's community gardens assessment guidelines would extend to include the use of land as a community orchard. The purpose of the community gardens guidelines is to provide a process for groups seeking to establish a community garden on council-owned or managed land. Councillors are not involved in the operational matters of the city, as these matters are for city officers to manage. Therefore, councillors will not be partaking in any negotiations relating to licensing agreements. And thank you for your questions.
Just on that one, Bryce. So we're currently looking to extend the guidelines that we currently have to include the activities which an orchard would be taking place under. Okay. Thank you very much. Right. Katerina Larissa Izdebekskaya. Apologize for my pronunciation.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, councillors. Good evening, active citizens. I notice that the willow leafed haykia tree in front of 261 Roslin Road had recently been removed. The removal contributes to the pattern of the significant loss of public and private trees since 2007. According to the city's tree dashboard, this public tree was in good health, had a good structure and useful life expectancy for 10-20 years. My question, one, is, did the council remove the tree? Why the council removed that tree?
Thank you very much, Katerina Larissa. Appreciate your passion for the trees, as I can see by your sign. I thought our Director of City Services for a response.
Thank you very much, Katerina Larissa, and I have a relatively simple and short answer for you. The willow-leaved haykia removal was authorised as part of an approved planning permit for that property. As part of that planning permit, a replacement tree will be required, and that tree is scheduled to be planted in front of 261 Roslin Road in the coming planting season.
Question number 2, will it be replaced?
Yes, sorry, I answered your
during the 2023 planning season?
Yes, sorry, I mistakenly answered that already, but yes, we will be replanting that as soon as the planting season is available to us. So that's our commitment.
Out the front of the same property?
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. I thought Councillor Nelson wanted to speak as well.
I've just got a question of the officer. Did that get passed by council, that planning application, or did that go to VCAT? From memory, that went to VCAT.
I would have to take that on notice. I don't know the answer to that.
I'm almost certain it did.
Thank you. Tim Matthews. Is Tim Matthews here with us this evening? How are you, Tim? Excellent. If I could just get you to state your name, your time will be yours as soon as you start.
My name is Tim Matthews. I've lived in Lara and property and run a business for 38 years there. I have 3 properties that lay within the proposed devaluing SBO overlays from rain. I object to these overlays and ask Council to abandon this amendment, as I'm convinced it's fatally flawed, unjustified and unfair in its design and application. Regarding my first question, the Director of Planning has testified to this Council that SBO overlays have little impact other than to set floor heights of new construction. So question 1, what are the stated works listed in clause 44.05-2 on existing built properties that trigger these prohibitively expensive planning permits? And what is the mandatory minimum and likely professional hires that the applicant must pay for under an SBO?
Thank you very much for your first question, Tim. I'll go to our Director for City Planning and Economy for a response.
Thanks for the questions, Tim. Thank you, Mayor. The special building overlay clause you refer to states that a permit is required for building and works. There's also a list of building and works that do not require a permit that are listed there as well. It is best to look at this clause on the planning schemes online or seek specific advice from our planning department at no cost. If you have a particular proposal in mind, they're best assess it against a proposal rather than an open-ended question. For a new dwelling or a major extension, in addition to the normal professional expertise such that may be required as drafting, architecture, building, surveying, would also need to be engaged to provide accurate ground and floor levels. In some cases, with larger or complex developments, it may require a flood-prone areas and specialists in engineering advice. So it really depends on the scale of the development, what may be required to do any sort of estimate of cost wouldn't be possible.
In regards to my second question, Planning's current report and recommendations on the proposed SBO overlays in Lara relies on the extent of and areas of predicted mapping flows from rain on a given property as determining the risk factors for exemptions. I understand the Planning Director has stated areas of an SBO property not showing as being within mapped water flows do not require an SBO type planning permit for listed works. So question 2 is, what written clause in the Victorian planning scheme specifically states that the mapped areas on an SBO property showing no water flows, such as white shaded sections, are not subject to planning permit under the SBO schedule of works, and how would these exclusion areas be quantified?
Thank you, Tim, for that question. And certainly there are parts of it, as we receive these questions later, we'll further investigate. But certainly in the first instance regarding the clause, it's more so it's standard practice that a permit is only required if building works are proposed within the mapped overlay area. And it's certainly a really important point you raise. It's where it's showing the potential for the flooding is if the building and works are proposed on that part of the property, that triggers it. If it's proposed outside of that mapped area, it doesn't trigger it. So just having the overlay on their property doesn't automatically trigger it. Depends where it is mapped on that parcel of land itself and where the works are proposed if the trigger occurs. But some of the other aspects you asked, we'll come back to you in more detail with an assessment, yeah. And certainly we're happy to arrange a meeting to discuss it if you wish as well with the staff. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Lionel McWilliam. Why, Lionel? Excellent. Can you say your full name? Your time is yours.
Yeah, it's getting a regular thing. My question is in regard to Amendment C339. The information is confusing, in particular the maps, most of all, which have no dates on them. If you look at these maps, I challenge anybody to really try and figure out what's going on with this overlay. Same with that one. On a previous map, on page 15, of the, it's a long word, geelong.com.au, Common Public Documents Amendment Act, overlay maps and whatever, it's in the question. So on this map, this is my property here in the rural living zone. Previously it had some blue on it, but I've lived there for 40 years. and I haven't had any problems. Now, by the time it took us to find this map, the blue's all gone. So does that mean that all this area in white is now not subject to the SBO? So with that, as I said, a lot of the maps are confusing. This one in particular, which shows a lot of blue, and you can't distinguish from any of this of where you're going to be. So I'm asking Council tonight to totally disregard this C339. It means a lot more work, and I think a lot more consultation with the residents, and we just need to get this sorted out. Can Council provide clearer documentation so that the residents can present to the insurers whether their property is or is not subject to the SBO? You know, a lot of people, especially even older than me, they haven't got a clue what's going on and have lived there a lot longer and whatever. But with all the new developments, as we've said before, the areas under the control of developers has been disregarded. Now, we can't fight that sort of thing. So I think this whole thing needs to be totally ignored. Don't let it go to a planning meeting and get back to basics. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lionel. Third Order Director of City Planning and Economy, please.
Thank you, Lionel, for the questions and for coming along this evening. Certainly we acknowledge the mapping on the websites, they can be confusing because there's multiple overlays at play as well. And it does show the officially exhibited maps as well as the maps of areas proposed to be removed by the council. After the council meeting tonight, the city will, subject to the decisions, will continue to update the webpage and replace any redundant maps that sit on there. Please note, particularly in the circumstance you're raising, there is separate documents showing the exhibited special building overlay maps. The SBO is a different overlay to the flood overlay and the land subject to inundation overlay. So it's worth, a property should always be checked against all of these. And we have continued for over a year now to obviously make our staff available, who want to be available, to deal with that one-on-one, because recognise that the scale we're producing for the council decisions is very different to what's required for an individual inquiry. So when we've been doing these via either telephone or face-to-face, we actually pull up that, blow it up completely so the resident can see that and provide them a copy of that plan as well, where it specifically relates to their property. And certainly working at this scale, that's what's required in best. But we do acknowledge how the confusion it can be with the mass and the scale of the area we're working with and the mapping technology as well. So that's a fair point raised.
Just to reiterate, councillors, please knock this back tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lionel. Louis De Coca. Are you, Louis?
Fine, thank you, Mr. Mayor, councillors. My question addresses road safety, pedestrian safety on South Valley Road, and I know a number of our councillors, also Councillor Nelson, would be well aware of South Valley Road and the areas that I'm raising. Now, safety concerns for the school children of Ballet Primary has been raised with the council a number of years ago, I think 2016, at the earliest that I know of, certainly in 2020. In 2021, a resident raised with the council at a meeting the safety concerns stretching from Ballet Primary to Roslyn Road, the roundabout. And in the middle of that are two bus stops on the Malvern Court Road on the one hand and Cobden on the other hand. And they're in kind of a valley between two hills, and with cars going at speed down the hill, anyone trying to dash in between or across to any of those bus stops find themselves in strife. Now, that was pointed out. The answer of the council focused on Ballet Primary, and a meeting that was then promised to take place in August 2021. So my question is, given the recognised concerns around safety, and especially the safety of children, recognised in 2021, what has happened in relation to the areas around Ballet Primary, Morven Court and Cobden bus stops, and then the Heighton primary end of South Valley Road. Now, I need to point out, not the Roslyn side, which has a manned street crossing for children, but specifically the roundabout. I can also point out that we have engaged the council. We were pointed to the Department of Transport. I engaged with them. It was, my concerns were treated with dismissiveness, which I took during that engagement as probably stemming from the fact that they were using outdated data on traffic volume in South Valley and lacked information and understanding of the context of that discussion. But this council has that, and therefore I'm back tonight to ask, since 2021, what has actually been done to improve safety? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louis. As your passion is well warranted, safety must always be addressed first and foremost. So we'll ask David Greaves, Acting Director of City Services, for a response on updates since that time frame.
Yeah, thank you, Louis, and some great items raised. So in relation to the Ballerine Primary School, the City has drafted design options for your concerns raised at the existing school crossing near Kennedy Grove. While the final solution has not yet been reached by City officers, we do continue to work on this matter to ensure a safe solution is implemented as soon as possible. So we are working on that project. In relation to your second area of concern, the Morven Court, Cobden Street bus stop, the City does recognise your concerns raised about the pedestrian safety, and as you noted earlier, you had talked to Department of Transport, but unfortunately we cannot consider a staffed school crossing at this location due to it being an arterial road that is managed by the state government and therefore under their remit. The City does encourage residents to contact, again, the Department of Transport, and if we can somehow help with those discussions, we would like to talk to you. But for further pedestrian facilities, though, or upgrades, it does sit with the Department of Transport. And the Heighton primary end of South Valley Road, again, we understand that this is part of the Department of Transport and Planning, is involved in managing this intersection with Roslyn Road. And again, any further improvements in that area will be required to come from the Department of Transport. So the City does prioritise safety and wellbeing of the community members, and officers will continue to work with the relevant stakeholders to address these concerns and implement appropriate solutions to ensure pedestrian safety in that area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David.
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate that prioritisation of safety and look forward to that support and intervention in that engagement of the department.
Well, no,
thank you.
That'll be Louis. Thank you. I will just note that my alarm just went off, indicating we have used or allocated 45 minutes for question and submission time. However, I will be extending it, seeing as we are only just over through halfway of our pre-submitted questions. So we'll be extending question time for all pre-submitted questions. Next submitter, Jean Naldecoca. How are you, Jean?
I'm fine, thank you.
Well, thank you. Very well.
I'll start with my first question. During the January Council meeting, I asked a question about the replacement of a tree in front of 54 Barrable Road. That's a public tree, and very much like the tree in front of 261 Roslyn Road, removed by council. And council assured me, almost, I think, wording identical to tonight's answer, that that tree would be replaced. That assurance was in 2021. The tree replacement would be in the 2022 season. So I asked the question in January 2023, where's the tree? City Services responded that they identified constraints on the site which necessitated further investigation. So I followed up on the 6th of March, and I specifically asked for more comprehensive details about 54 Barrable Road, the tree in front of that site. Council confirmed receipt of my request, and they indicated that a response was being prepared. That was on the 6th of March. I haven't yet received any response. So I'm back here. My question, can City Services kindly provide more comprehensive details regarding the identified constraints and the reasons for further investigation prior to planting for 54 Barrable Road?
Thank you for your question, John. Once again, I'll go to Acting Director of City Services, David Greaves. David.
Thank you, Jean, for your question. And I do apologise if you have not received a response from us from the 6th of March. That is under my responsibility, and I will ensure that that happens in this coming week, and I wasn't aware of that. In relation to your question around what identified constraints there were, when the city conducts any tree planting, including replacement of trees, we consider a suite of constraints: location, location of underground and overhead services, especially around the power lines overhead and the restraints caused by our need to meet our minimum requirements there, potential to impede pedestrian and traffic movement as well as line of sight, consultation with landowners, and the location meets regulatory requirements. So that's the constraints that we look at when we go to plant a tree. In relation to us not responding to you, I will follow that up.
They're very generic outlines of things we must consider when replanting a tree, as you note. However, I do believe we need a specific answer on these conditions around this tree. When we get those to Jean, can I please be included in that communication? Correct. As you have promised to do so? Thank you. We will get you those specifics on that
I look forward to specific responses.
Absolutely. I'll make sure I'm included on that one
Thanks.
too. Thank you.
Second question. The 2015 Urban Tree Forest Strategy estimated, well, actually, let me reverse and say you've got my written question and complete, so I'll just summarise. The 2015 Urban Forest Strategy estimated that Geelong's tree canopy is 14%, compared to an optimum of 40. That 14 is split in half, 7 on private, 7 on public land. The council is allowing unnecessary culling of trees on private land by developers. In Highton alone, with only 7 successful development applications, that's a very small portion of the hundreds of applications that council receives. The city lost 182 trees, 7 applications. And we're not even counting the public trees, including 261 that Katerina asked about. This happens while the council is struggling to preserve and expand the public tree component. By the council, the city's own reports on the website, it indicates that it's not meeting its tree targets, and I quote, and it has no capacity to meet them. Given these constraints to expand the public tree coverage, you'd thought it's only logical that we sensibly preserve existing trees on private land where they can be retained. However, I sat in a planning meeting last week where the planning committee approved another application in a pattern of planning decisions that allows the removal of all trees, including boundary trees and vegetation on the site. And that application was approved without a single question from any councillor about whether it was necessary to remove, about urban ecology, about standard B13 or B38, which also deals with retention of mature trees. My question is, why does the council not adequately enforce the urban heat mitigating canopy tree provisions the state government introduced into the Greater Geelong Planning Scheme in June 2022? And they do extend beyond Clause 15, which has been cited to me. It includes 550703, it includes 550308. I'm happy to provide you with a complete list. That's my first. Secondly, why don't you follow the example of several Victorian councils by urgently strengthening tree protection through a local tree protection law? Thanks.
No, thank you, Jean. That's an incredibly thorough and fantastic question.
Thanks,
David.
John. And Council, where is required, assesses the policy for environmental sustainability development at Clause 15, as you note, of the Greater Geelong Planning Scheme as part of a planning permit application. The policy includes several strategies such as urban heat island effects and provision of canopy trees. These strategies, however, do not trigger the need for a planning permit to remove the canopy trees. Where applicable, Council will require a sustainable design assessment or similar to be provided by the applicant and reviewed by Council's Environmentally Sustainable Development Officer. This assessment assists to inform Council's decision on applicable planning permit applications, noting the SDA or the Sustainable Design Assessment will often form part of any endorsed plans or a planning permit. So that was part of question A, and your second question was work is underway on a report providing options for strengthening tree protections in the Greater Geelong region. This work is being undertaken in response to a notice of motion supported by Council last year. In accordance with that notice of motion, the report will summarise existing protections for trees on private land in Greater Geelong, investigate policies and planning controls in place in other municipalities that provide greater protection for trees on private land, outline options for enhancing protection of trees on private land in urban environments within Greater Geelong, including potential pros and cons, and identify the process or processes for introduction of any such initiatives, should Council wish to pursue them, including timelines, costs and community consultation. We expect this report to be completed within this year. Thank you.
Thank you. It doesn't trigger permit questions now, but it's up to the Council to change the planning scheme to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Jenna Wade. Do I have a Jenna Wade here this evening? Oh, on Bill Marshall. How are you, Bill?
Good evening, councillors.
Good evening.
Many of whom saw me only a couple of weeks ago when I was in front of the Planning Committee on a different topic. My name's Bill Marshall, resident of Highton, known to many of the councillors here. And while preparing for last week's Planning Committee meeting, I visited the Planning Committee page on the City of Greater Geelong's website to review the committee meeting minutes and decisions between 2019-23 because they were relevant to the opposition to a particular development that I was talking about last week. We know that the FOI Act requires agencies, including councils, to publish their information and be published on a website and be available to anyone who wants to see them. And also the Local Government Act requires council to make all its information available to the public unless it's confidential or harmful. So the requirements are quite clear. The City of Greater Geelong's public transparency policy also requires that the council and anyone carrying out delegated functions of the council, including staff and official people, also need to be able to put this information out to the public. In particular, policy specifies that the council meeting minutes must be made publicly available. And when I went into the site and had a look, the Planning Committee minutes prior to 2022 were not available on the website. My question is, why is this the case, and are we going to do something about going back and republishing or reallocating some of those earlier minutes that are relevant to some of the issues that we face today? Thank you.
Thank you. Great question, Bill. And upon receiving your question, I went online to have a look at myself, and you are correct. I couldn't find any meeting minutes previously to 2002. Council meeting minutes, you can get all the way back to 2013. That's great, but it is important, you're right, that we do have access to this information.
Planning Committee, where some decisions on planning applications have been made which are relevant to some of the things.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll throw to our Director of Economy and City Planning and Economy, Gail Smith, please.
Sounds like we all concur, Mayor, with Bill as well. So look, we do appreciate you raising the issue, and as a consequence, the officers are now going to review that practice regarding how long they retain for the Planning Committee online. for the minutes for that area, and we'll undertake that and contact you as we finish the review to let you know what that position will be going forward and how long they're retained online. But thank you for raising it. It's a very good point. I would expect them to be there longer as well.
And I'm sure that the archives are there. It's just a case of getting the systems to talk to each other.
Yeah, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. All right, Felicity Dales. Wave, Felicity. Excellent. If I just hear you state your full name, your time will be yours.
My name is Felicity Dales, and my question is, how do you claim that the men and women of Geelong elected and gave consent to partake in the World Economic Forum and United Nations global agenda of smart cities?
Thank you for your question. All right, I gather there's some enthusiasm and support for your question here, but we might have some silence and we can throw it straight to our director for a response. Gail Smith, please.
Thank you for Felicity attending and asking the questions. I'll flip the answer I have a little bit to get more to the point, and then go on with some of the context of that. But there's no agreement that exists between the city and the World Economic Forum or United Nations in the delivery of the Smart City program. Some further context to that, though, is, look, the city notes this question is similar to others that are being posed across multiple councils and on social media and received via email. The city also notes there's considerable, sometimes misinterpretation of the key terms of such as a 15-minute city, often used as a 20-minute city, as a term used in planning terms. So it leaves a level of being misunderstood, and certainly the 20-minute city is referring to, obviously, access to facilities and services within a 20-minute area is how it's been used in the past. The Geelong Smart City Strategic Framework and implementation guides the way we use our smart technology, data and innovation in our region, and is underpinned by the council's or the community's clever and creative vision. These documents are all publicly available and we could assist in accessing them. Question 2.
I would be interested in those documents, so if you could guide me to those links, I'd appreciate that so that I can have further clarity, and I'd really like the detail about it, just to confirm. Can you produce the specific document? Well, you just confirmed that you didn't have a document, I'm guessing, or an agreement provided full disclosure to the men and women of Geelong in relation to the choices you have made as a council in relation to smart cities, and how long have you been putting resources and staffing this agenda of smart cities?
Thank you, Felicity. Got a Gail for a response?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. As I just mentioned before, the draft Geelong Smart City Strategic Framework was endorsed by Council for public exhibition on 1st of December 2020 and formally adopted by Council on the 23rd of March 2021. The city's work in the smart city space predates that strategic work, with the Department of Smart Cities actually established in 2018. It should be noted, though, that the concept of smart cities could be alternatively described as city innovation, and this is something the city's done for a long period of time and is very proud of its history in that sector.
Can you repeat that?
Sorry, we don't take questions from the crowd right now. We're answering a specific question.
If I could just,
Yes.
through the Mayor, if I could, so the key comment was smart cities is a term used more recently, but really could be summed up as applying innovation and technologies across in our system as well. And that's being done a lot earlier than 2018 when the smart city term was formally developed. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. But that, Gareth, that Geelong Smart City Strategic Framework is a document that may be available online?
Yes, and I know we'd have the contact details for Felicity's part of the question, so we're going to send an email link through to that this week.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you
I
very
noticed
much.
that online it's not 2018 to 22, so I was wondering if you had an updated version for 2023 and beyond.
Not.
No, I don't believe, but I'll grab the relevant links and make sure their website's updated as a replace to that. So we'll get you an email this week, Felicity. Thank you.
Thank you, Felicity. All right. Gary Oranyuk. Gary here this evening? I saw Gary in the crowd earlier. If not, I'll go on to Sam Smith. Now, this is in regards to Rippleside and Balmoral Quay. I believe Council can tell you you've decided to declare a conflict of interest.
Yeah, I've sought some further advice through our acting CEO by the governance officer, and even though we've got all the questions and answers in front of us, it's still recommended that have a family member that lives in that area that would be impacted one way or another by the decisions that this council may or may not make in the future on this item, so I'll step aside.
It is uncommon practice to step out in question time, but it's always best to err on the edge of caution with this. So you're stepping out as well noted. Thank you, Councillor Contell. Bye, Sam.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors.
Good evening. Say your full name and your time is yours.
Sam Smith.
Thank you.
I'm here with a group of Rippleside residents advocating for our small community, which is currently being mowed down by traffic and developers. My questions relate to councillor representation, or what seems to be a lack of willingness of councillors and council officers to proactively engage with the community on matters most affecting them. These matters are not only in response to Balmoral Quay, but the wider issues of traffic and car parking in our area happening right now. Question 1. What prior knowledge did some or all councillors have of the plans submitted by developer Urbis Proprietary Limited on behalf of Balmoral Quay Proprietary Limited at the November 2022 meeting, at which council approved the developer to go ahead with planning to change the existing Rippleside Urban Design Guidelines June 2000 and Rippleside Comprehensive Development Plan February 2000, which are very relevant residential planning controls and exist to protect our streets, parks and spaces we live?
Thank you, Sam. I'll go Director for City Planning and Economy for response. Gareth, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for the question, Sam. And certainly I'll respond on behalf of the officers and our involvement. So it is normal practice that officers and not councillors participate in the assessment of planning scheme amendments before it is put to the formal council. Officers need to be satisfied that a proposal has potential strategic, justified and is generally supported by the planning policy that exists on a day. This process took some time as officers required a lot further information from the proponents, and the plans were actually changed to accommodate some initial concerns to get it to the stage it is right now. Council considered the officers' recommendation in an open council meeting and resolved to allow it to go out on public exhibition to allow that next phase of engagement to occur.
So as residents, we've got to wait until this exhibition to be able to respond?
Yeah, correct, which is a standard planning scheme amendment process, yes, that's right. And then there's subject to how that process runs, and there's additional opportunities via panel or otherwise as well.
So I understand there was a vote taken in November. So is that vote taken with hearing, let's call it one side of, so the developer's side without hearing the residents? So I guess where was our voice when this vote was taken?
No, so Sam, so the vote was to put it out for public exhibition, which is where the community's voice is heard into the process. So it's a vote for community consultation.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
Why did our, second question, why did our local councils in particular not pause their decision so as to advise the community or consult them of this proposal and give them adequate time to respond when the developer has been speaking with council officers regarding this intended proposal for more than 18 months?
Mayor, thanks, Tim. Sam, sorry. Tim was out. Apologies. Council, as we said, Council has not yet made a decision on the proposal except to allow it to go to public exhibition. It's the only decision that's been made. Public consultation occurs through the process of that exhibition. Exhibition involves publishing all amendment documents on the city's website, sending letters to nearby landowners and publishing a notice in the local newspaper. It is through this process that submissions around the amendment are encouraged from the community. After the exhibition process, city officers will work with submitters to resolve submissions where possible. Any outstanding or unresolved submissions are normally then referred to an independent panel for consideration. Public exhibition is due to commence, we expect, in May this year, subject to a ministerial approval. I hope that assists, Sam.
Thank you, Sam. We'll just pause for a moment so Councillor Contell can rejoin us. All right. Submitting to number 21, Frank Chaliflower. How are you, Frank? Yeah, well, thank you. Well, if I could just get you to state your full name, your time will be yours.
Good evening, honoured councillors and mayor. This submission is in regard to C339, not what you said it was, so there's an error in the paper. My name is Frank Chalafour. I live in Lara on a 2-acre rural living zone block that has never flooded and is targeted for an SBO based on predicted rain. Preamble to my first question. The current offer from planning is you win a SBO overlay exemption if a rainstorm puddle is predicted to be 50 square meters or less, regardless of your block size. My property has 8,094 square meters, or 162 times larger than this 50-meter puddle, which is hardly a threat or a standard of measure that would sensibly apply to me and others living on acreage. Over 1,000 other proposed SBOs in Lara on 5 acres each have 20,235 square meters, where a 50-meter puddle may be hard to locate. Carefully consider the inequities imposed on this latest 50 square meter rain ponding size limit needed to win an SBO exemption. Any size block will not be exempted that shows even 51 square meters of rain puddle mapping based on their desktop-only predictions from climate change to happen in the years 2050 to 2070. On a flood overlaid property, the planning department holds all the cards. Any requirement or decision whatsoever made during the permit process that the officer comes up with, regardless of expense, overreach, or being unsupported in fact, cannot be contested, reviewed, or appealed per Victoria planning laws. The laws of natural justice simply don't apply. My first question, will the Director of Planning confirm to this Council that Victoria Planning Amendment VC 148 of 31 July 2018, Clause 44055, exemption from notice and review, established that an applicant for a planning permit under an SBO flood overlay has no rights of review or appeal on decisions regarding the permit application and its processes that are normally afforded under the Planning and Environment Act at Section 64(1), 2, 3, and 82(1).
Thank you for your first question, Frank. I'll pass over to our Director for a response. Please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks again for coming along, Frank, and asking the questions. So Clause 44.05 is part of the main special building overlay clause in the planning scheme. As you say, it exempts SBO permit applications from notice requirements, that is meaning having to be advertised. It also exempts SBO applications from Clause 82(1) of the Planning Environment Act, which allows objectors to apply to VCAT to review a decision when a permit is granted, as you stated. But however, an applicant, which is where this probably comes more into play, the property owner, is normally the applicant, can lodge an appeal to VCAT against a decision to refuse a permit or against permit conditions, so they do have an opportunity.
And how it reads. My second question. The preamble to my second question is, the Victoria Planning Scheme identifies the SBO only for urban zones where the close proximity and works may well affect adjoining homes. Planning stated the SBO was not a good fit in the rural living zone, and they struggled with this. Flood overlays, according to a recent study supplied by planning, may wipe 25% or $260,000 in market value from my property and some $1.2 billion in LARA valuations on 2,881 proposed SBOs. All this is based on exaggerated desktop SBO modeling predictions of rain puddle threats to apply in the years 2050 to 2070, per the flood consultant's report and admissions. I plead with you to abandon this amendment by refusing it. Far too many errors, omissions, discrepancies, and proven untruths by planning and its flood consultant have fatally infected the processes of this amendment from its inception. LARA's 7,744 overlay targeted ratepayers set to lose millions in property values deserve far better. Events like the 11th hour bait and switch of the original advertised flood study report after 561 residents objected to it, followed by multiple refusals to convene adequate, large-scale public consultation sessions or to provide reliable promised answers to written questions, all played a part. Question: why did a senior planning staff manager quote in writing that a planning permit under an SBO overlay was not required for a handicap access ramp on any size block without first looking it up on the clearly published list of SBO works sent to him, and then for him to take 4 months to backflip that a permit would be required?
Thank you very much for your question, Frank. Gareth?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Frank, for the question, and thanks for catching up before the meeting as well, where I could apologise, because you are correct, there is a mistake that was made on the advice that disabled access ramp was exempt from the SBO permit requirements. In providing the recent updates to you in the Amendment C339, we checked if there were outstanding issues from previous emails, and at the time the officers realised there was an incorrect aspect to it. The planning scheme has a general exemption for disabled access ramps, but not where an overlay or zone specifically requires a permit. That said, in the extreme rare event there was an application required for the disabled ramp only, there are opportunities for fees waiver in part of full or based on individual circumstances as well in those circumstances. So, in respect to the earlier comment and question you made, the city has not, regarding the values of properties, the city has not been provided with evidence that these types of overlays reduce property values by 25%. The SBO and other flood overlays have been in place in towns and suburbs across Geelong for many years, and this includes suburbs such as Barwon Heads, Ocean Grove, Port Arlington, Highton and Newtown, and these cities see no evidence of property values as suggested in your comments. Drop.
I ask the Council to abandon this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Vanessa Whittam. There you are. How are you, Vanessa? Excellent. If you say your full name, your time will be yours.
Thank you. My name is Vanessa Whittam. The information on the Urban Forest dashboard on the Geelong Data Exchange is limited to public trees. It does not address trees on private land. Geelong proudly boasts many trees on private land that are significant for their horticultural, aesthetic, historic, environmental, social or cultural values. The City of Greater Geelong Urban Forest Strategy Action Plan, endorsed by the Council in November 2015, so that's 8 years ago, included the development and maintenance of a significant tree register as an action to achieve best practice urban tree management. The Council has communicated to the community that it recognises the value of a significant tree register to be developed. Question 1. Would the council kindly provide feedback on the progress made to date to develop and launch a significant tree register for Geelong?
For your question, Vanessa. I'll go to our Acting Director of City Services.
Thank you, Vanessa. And in answer to question 1, the current progress on a significant tree register is limited, and limited by funding, which is part of your second question.
Okay. In answer to a previous question, council advised that an estimate had been made of the funds to create a significant tree register in correspondence regarding the 2022-23 budget. A council officer advised the estimate of funds required to be significant tree register development 1, a staff member $100,000 for one full-time ongoing role, one presumes that's per annum, to design, implement and manage the significant tree registering program, and 2, program development, another $100,000 for consultants to support program design and implementation, data design, insights, dashboard development, and community engagement, program marketing and promotion. So my question is, will council budget funds for the creation of a significant tree register in the council budget for the financial year July 23 to June of 24?
Thank you again, Vanessa. The city does recognise the value of the significant tree register. A funding request was put forward in the 22-23 budget, so this year's budget, but unfortunately was not successful in gaining priority through that process. The development and launch of the project does rely on those funding models, and the city continues to monitor external opportunities through the grant system and other potential funding options. As per this year's budget, the draft budget for 23-24 for the City of Greater Geelong will be tabled at the council meeting on the 26th of April this year. This will be followed by the 28-day community engagement period, during which time people can make submissions, which you could make for this project. All submissions will be considered and heard if requested submitted by a review panel on the 7th of June. So thank you. No, it wasn't funded. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Bethel. Right. Submitted number 23, Matthew Bevan, representing residents of Lakeside Boulevard. Is Matthew here this evening? Oh, there you are. How are you, Matthew? Good. Excellent.
Matthew Bevan. I was submitter 279, and there still hasn't been a one-on-one session. There has been no guidance through that process. But what I'm bringing to you tonight is, through that submission and the one-on-one at Lara Community Centre, I was given a plan that shows that I didn't just have an SBO, I also had an LSIO1 on the front of my property. And under further investigation, this LSIO1 affects 18 out of 28 front properties that overlook lakelands on Lakeside Boulevard. That's 64% of the houses on our street that have been had this overlay put against it. It's only marginally affecting all properties and only just touching the boundary lines. And when I go and point to point and test what's going on with the laser level, it would leave 300 to 500 mil of water on our street, not allowing access in and out of our properties. Now, when I go and test that against the bank, which is part of the landscaping of our parklands, the water would have flown over by 150, 250 mil in places. So the modelling seems to be incorrect. Needs to be reviewed. It needs an on-site, I'm proposing that we need to have an on-site appointment, and we need to come to an engineering solution. Probably 15 out of the 18 houses, nothing probably needs to be conducted for. The other 3 houses, we're probably needing 200 mil scraped off the top of the bank that would allow the water that could pool on Lakeside Boulevard to flow into the parklands. The parklands, the watercourse is Alco drainage system, which lays 1,650 lower than the property lines of the house. We've only ever seen that water increase in height 600 to 900 mil. It's making us very nervous knowing that the North Growth Corridor will feed extra water in through our area. And this shouldn't be affecting our properties. And we need to come up with a way that we can out-engineer the problem of our street holding the water. So that's what I'm asking, is that if the LSIO1 is affecting 18 out of 28 properties, that we need action from the City of Greater Geelong if there is any grounding on this report and where this LSIO1 level has put the water down our street, or otherwise, yeah.
Thank you for your first question,
that's
Matthew.
my first question, yeah.
Absolutely. Director of City Planning and Economy.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Matthew, for attending and representing a group of people. It's good work. The City understands, I understand that you have been actually contact with the Coordinator Strategic Implementation to have a discussion about this issue, recognising only marginally affects the properties as you've outlined. City officers intend to review these maps if the amendment is referred to the panel. And in relation to your proposed works, to remedy to the situation, this will need to be reviewed further by City Engineering Department and a response provided in writing. Obviously, a bit of technical work to be done on that, so not at this short notice. The proposed overlays reflect existing conditions, though, and potential inundation in flood events, but in general do not consider works or future infrastructure. They're not fully planned or underway, so I can't consider that at this stage. I'll let you go to question 2 if you want to.
Thanks. So my question 2 is the area and population increasing through Lara and future northern growth zones, the smaller properties sizes increase the amount of runoff and limit the absorption into the ground. Now, through the massive growth that Lara is having, we are still pushing all of Hovels Creek water out to Corio Bay through under the Lara Railway Bridge, which was built in the 1850s when Lara had a population of about 400 people. So my question is, what works are scheduled toward existing infrastructure? What is planned to increase the volume of water that passes through Hovels Creek and Alco Drain?
Yeah, look, again, there's a lot involved in the questions I'm pretty sure you appreciate as well. We're happy to work with engineers to provide that further advice to answer your question. So, but the Lara flood study does identify some drainage infrastructure projects as part of it, but the current status of the projects need to be further investigated to accurately answer the question provided. We are committed, we're happy to work through that with yourself and a group of residents to actually answer those questions in more detail and do the assessment. I must just, it's not on these answers here, but must add, with those growth areas, you know, particularly for Lara, but everywhere as well, there's significant flood studies are done in advance to recognise how do you actually manage that increase in water over time to not impact properties downstream. So it's a basis of actually allowing those to approve. And there's significant design work that's done on those, and Lara West particularly, about how to manage that water. And it's in fact why, I was referred to before, but why some of those properties were removed from the amendment, because they've been designed out. The flood situation's been designed for those properties, but also with an understanding of how they might have an effect downstream. So, but again, very comprehensive that we can actually chat to you further on that.
I'll just state one other fact. After the October-November rain event, I took some photos and sent the photos onto the City of Greater Geelong to try and raise a maintenance request to clear the channel where the Alco drainage system goes through under the railway line to Hovels Creek. That still hasn't been done, and the water's running uphill due to the vegetation and the amount of silt. There's quite bad erosion down beside the Lara railway line that's bringing a lot of silt. It needs to be addressed so that we can release the water into Hovels Creek.
Well noted. Thank you, Matthew. We'll follow that
Thank
one
you,
up.
Thanks, Matthew.
Right. Thank you, everybody. That concludes question time for this evening. Thank you again to the submitters of questions this evening and to councillors and officers for answering such questions. Thank you. I will now be moving into petitions and joint letters. We've received 3 petitions to be tabled by councillors this evening. The first one by Councillor Mason on behalf of Alan Davis. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I have a petition here from Alan Davis. It has 114 signatures. Alan's is associated with the community hub in Leopold in Kensington Road. And Alan is submitting that there are deficiencies in the car parking. There need to be more car parks, and a lot of people are inconvenienced, especially people in their senior years. So I table this first petition.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. I believe you have a second petition to table on behalf of Protect the Bellarine.
Yes, I have a petition on behalf of Protect the Bellarine, which is to implement an immediate injunction to cease mature native vegetation destruction at 541 to 569 Ibbotson Street in St Leonards. There are about 690 signatures, and there is a lot of concern in that community about 80 standing mature eucalyptus trees, 120 she oaks and others which are under threat, and 68 mature trees that have already been removed.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. I believe there was another petition to be tabled on behalf of by Councillor Murray on behalf of Sally Hunt. Councillor Murray.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is on behalf of Sally Hunt. I'm not too sure if Sally's here tonight, but in any event, it's in relation to the issue of flooding around the Hamlin Heights area. There's about 100 signatures on this petition, and it says, "We, the undersigned, petition the City of Greater Geelong to call and hold a public meeting to discuss the issue of flooding and drainage in the Hamlin Heights area and to satisfactorily resolve the matter with residences." So I'll present that to you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murray. Right, with that, we'll move into section 2, being reports for this evening. Now, the first item is the Youth Council's first report of 2023. To present the first Youth Council report for 2023, and I would like to welcome Junior Mayor Irene Melillo to address the council meeting. Junior Mayor, if you please. Give a round of applause.
I'm just checking. Okay, everyone could hear me. I just didn't. Yeah, maybe. Thank you. To begin, Youth Council would like to acknowledge the Wadawurrung people as the traditional owners of the land, waterways and skies, and pay our respects to the elders past and present. Good evening, Mayor Sullivan, councillors, council staff, Youth Council members and community members, as well as those who are joining us online. I'm here tonight to present our first report for 2023 on page 4. We introduce each of the Youth Council members, and as you all have read, all have a wealth of knowledge, experience and passion that they bring to this year's program. To start off the year, our introduction took place over 3 days in January at Werrikee Nile and here in the council chambers to prepare us for our year ahead. During the first two induction meetings, members had the chance to get to know each other, as well as hear all about the program and our roles and responsibilities. In our final informal inductions, members were welcomed and introduced to lots of people across the city who work behind the scenes in the Youth Council program. Our highlight was hearing from Councillor Mason, who gave us a great advice for the year ahead and provided us with an overview of how our roles will interact with the council group. We will test and provide advice on matters of importance to young people. After Councillor Mason's address, we commenced the junior mayor election. 8 brave Youth Council members delivered their candidate speech to go in the running for the junior mayor election. It was an extremely competitive process, and I would like to congratulate all my members on their speeches. It was wonderful to hear from each of them. I would like to thank you, my fellow Youth Council members, for their votes, electing myself as Junior Mayor and Alina as Deputy Junior Mayor. We promise we won't let you down, and we look forward to speaking on behalf of the Youth Council, as well as the 40,000 or so young people across our city. Overall, the 3 induction meetings provided us with tremendous knowledge, excitement, readiness to commence our roles on Youth Council. I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you to all the city staff, parents and family who attended the induction, and we thank you for your time and commitment to the Youth Council program. In our first meeting in February, we developed and endorsed our Youth Council Group Charter, which outlines the expectations and responsibilities of Youth Council members. We then finalised our 4 Youth Council priority areas that will guide our work in 2023. Before agreeing on our 4 priority areas, Youth Council members were presented with a range of evidence to help inform our decision. We considered the results of the 2022 Mission Youth Survey, review the community-informed clever and creative strategy, and councillors' community plan, as well as reviewing and considering the 4 past Youth Council priority areas. After a robust debate, we decided on the following 4 priority areas: health and well-being, healthy, safe and accessible communities, diversity, equity and acceptance, and environment and sustainability education. Informed by the best available evidence, our own judgment, and guided by the city's priorities, we believe these 4 priority areas encompass the most important issue for young people in Geelong today. Before our next report is due, we will have met with councillors, discussed some of our key topics, and have formulated our first pieces of advice for councillors' consideration. We look forward to exploring our 4 priority areas, working together as a team and learning and developing skills and knowledge to be effective in our position on Youth Council. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you very much for delivering your report, Junior Mayor. The councillors and I certainly appreciate your insights and thoughts, and looking forward to working with you and the wider Junior Council group throughout the 2023. And I know there are some representatives here as well from the council, youth councillors. Very welcome this evening. And might I say, the fantastic mayoral colour scheme is really coming along nicely this evening. So we got the memo, each of us. With that, I'd like to put this item to the table. Moved by Deputy Mayor Aiken and seconded by Councillor Grisbeck online. Deputy Mayor Aiken.
I actually don't wish to say too much because I actually don't want to take away from what Irene has spoken. We've actually seen someone bring some dignity and respect to the council chamber in the way that they've presented their report. So thank you so much, Irene. I'm looking forward to the next 12 months, or certainly to the end of the year with this youth council group. Congratulations to all of you, and well done on electing Irene as your junior mayor. What a beautiful representative you are of Geelong's youth and our future. Thank you, Irene.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Aiken. Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Whilst I'll just note thank you to Irene for her speech. There is a group of people behind Irene which has proven that they've chosen to be youth councillors, and I wanted to call out the Windermere Ward councillors, particularly Ali, Alina and Ashton. I met all 3 of them before they were junior councillors, and they expressed an interest to me last year during a session that I held at Northern Bay College, and the passion by which, if it's any indication from the Windermere Ward junior councillors, I'm sure the other councillors are too, the passion is there for all of the topics, and I look forward to them bringing those topics to council via the chamber. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Grisbeck. Any other councillors to comment? Councillor Murray.
It's very quickly, I want to congratulate Irene and Alina on being elected mayor and deputy mayor. It's an exciting time, and of course all the other junior councillors that have been elected as well. So some here and some online, I believe. So a big thank you to the staff again for this great work, and we're indeed blessed in this city over the years to have great representation from Youth Council, and this year is no different. So we wish you all the best for the year and enjoy.
Councillor Murray. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Youth Mayor Irene. It was really my pleasure to meet all of you a few weeks ago at the induction and to note once again the very high calibre of our Youth Council. And it's wonderful that we're noting tonight that we are getting continuity from the recommendations from the work done, I should say, from the previous Youth Council, and there's going to be a continuum of concentration on subjects such as well-being, mental health and the environment and other things. So I'm looking very much forward to also having our mentoring sessions with our Bellarine councillors, Kiralee, Maximilian and Layla. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. So further comments? Oh, Councillor Contell.
Very clear.
Yep.
Mr Mayor, I just wanted to congratulate and also thank the junior councillors for showing leadership and courage and putting themselves forward in these roles. I do apologise, as I have previously, most of the engagements that you have with council are during my regular working time, so I apologise that I don't get to spend much time with you, but I do appreciate you putting yourself forward and showing that courage, and I'm sure that you'll get just as much out of it as what we'll get from you, so thank you.
Councillor Contell. With that, I'll throw back to Councillor Aiken, Deputy Mayor Aiken, to close.
Nothing further to add, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? It's carried. Thank you very much for bringing forth the first report for the year, Junior Mayor Melillo. Thank you. All right, item number 2 on the agenda, report. Amendment C339 GGEE, flood zones and overlays. Further review of Lara overlay, maps and submissions. Now we do have a registered conflict of interest with Councillor Grisbeck, which is why she has left the virtual screen up there. I'll put that to be moved, or for the table, to be moved by Councillor Mason and to be seconded by Councillor Cadwell. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We've certainly had a turn up tonight from Lara, and thank you for your inputs. I am disappointed that so many questions remain after, as Gareth has mentioned, more than a year of consultation and opportunities for one-to-one. But nevertheless, those questions seem to continue. And of course, this amendment is intended to manage the environmental hazard posed by stormwater and riverine flooding and impacts of coastal inundation and future sea level rise, much of which might be attributed to climate change. And I'd like to note also that there's already been done a lot of work in this space, it was mentioned earlier, including parts of Bowen Heads, Ocean Grove, Port Arlington.
Sorry, hang on 1 second. Councillor Grisbeck, are you within the meeting right now? We've got some delayed confirmation from the IT team if Councillor Grisbeck is in and without the meeting. We'll just pause for a moment. Thank you. Yep. Okay. We have absolute certainty now. We will continue. Councillor Mason, please.
So as I was in the middle of saying, we've already done a lot of work in this space, including parts of Bowen Heads, Ocean Grove, Port Arlington, Moolap, Corio, Newtown, Highton, Belmont and Wandana Heights. And we've been doing this work because there's a government requirement for council to address the threats and hazards associated with climate change. We've reiterated over recent years that there is a risk if council, as the planning authority, doesn't act on the flood mapping it has available, it may well be liable to damages incurred to property given the knowledge that we now have. and we can reduce this risk by acting on the scientific-based data it has available and applying the appropriate planning overlay or zone as proposed by this amendment. And I add, it's our duty of care to properly regulate development in flood-prone areas in an orderly manner. The overlays will help reduce the risk of property damage as a result of stormwater, riverine and coastal flooding by requiring a planning permit for new dwellings and other buildings and works. It seeks to revise planning scheme flood overlay and zone mapping across an area that includes a total of 7,744 properties. It was publicly exhibited in July 21, resulting in 561 submissions, where there were 535 objections, mostly from the Lara flood area. Consequently, there was a further review to the Lara flood study. This was prepared in July last year with input of city engineers and planners, the Corangamite Catchment Management Authority and flood experts at Water Technology. It recommends that 2,203 properties be removed from the overlays in the new housing estates of Lara, which has been developed since flood mapping was undertaken. Council officers and consultants reviewed the criteria and have found that properties that are only marginally affected by the special building overlay at Lara could also be removed. Council is therefore requested to endorse this approach, which removes the further 755 properties from the proposed SBO at Lara, in addition to the 2,203 properties recommended in the July 22 review. The submissions then need to be referred to an independent panel, where any submitter would be able to further present their case. City officers will conduct an information session for the Lara submitters prior to the panel hearing. I emphasise that's part of our motion today, that there will be an opportunity, we'll almost be finished, there will be an opportunity for there to be a public meeting and information given before this public hearing. The session will include an overview of the amendment and overlay and how to participate effectively in the panel hearing process. We also need to request the Minister for Planning to provide an additional 12 months to process the amendment to avoid the amendment lapsing under Section 31A of the Planning and Environment Act 1987. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Cadwell.
Mr Mayor, I reserve my right to speak at the end.
Thank you. Other councillors who wish to make comment? Deputy Mayor Aitken.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Look, first I want to acknowledge the officers have actually worked really hard on this, and that reflects why the first time they brought it to us, we weren't happy. The second time they brought it to us, they then removed 2,203 properties. And then they came back to us again, and the third time we actually said, look, it's still not passing the community's acceptance level. And they removed were able to find out how to remove another 755 properties. So they've come back to us again and said, look, we acknowledge it's complex, we acknowledge it's confusing, we acknowledge it's got mistakes, but please just accept it, councillors, and move it to the next level because we've got a planning deadline and framework to actually work towards. Look, we have a responsibility under the Local Government Act to make informed decisions as councillors. I have tried to see how I could work with what has been presented to us in the processes. However, I can't. And I encourage all other councillors to be questioning themselves as well too. Are they really making an informed decision tonight? The community is still confused. The community is still angry. They also believe that they're not properly and fully informed. And then if you just look at what's happened today, let me just tell you what's happened today. We've received an email telling us, yes, there's an error in the map that's been put out that the public actually looked at. Now, the public doesn't even know that unless they attended this council meeting tonight. We also then look at the answers to questions that were actually presented tonight as well too. Let's go to question 12, and the response to question 12 tonight said, I quote, "The city needs to investigate this further to provide an accurate response in writing." So in other words, we can't respond, but it's okay, councillors, please pass the planning process and amendment to the panel. We then go to question 13, and it says, after the council meeting, the city will update the website and replace redundant maps. It actually says, the quote in the answer from our planning officer says, "The city acknowledges the mapping on the website can be confusing." That's not the community's responsibility, that's our responsibility to make sure it isn't confusing. And then we go further into what we have been presented tonight. We go to question 21, and the response to question 21 says, in the answer, it says, "You are correct, a mistake was made and you were given the wrong advice." The community is so confused and angry because it's not just once, it's not just twice, it's not just 3 times, it is multiple times. And then we are expected then to actually say there's a process and we have to accept that and just move it forward. We have a greater responsibility to make informed decisions. We have a responsibility to make sure that we make decisions based on accurate information, not on mistakes, not on confusion, not on give us more time and we'll respond at a later date. That's actually what we've been asked just tonight. Could you imagine what this community has actually experienced over the last 2 years since this was first presented to them in July 2020? They've actually had this continuously. The original flood study is still questioned and challengeable. Therefore, what I encourage the council group is that this amendment should be abandoned. We should improve our messaging and our understanding before we actually present something to a panel, and that is our responsibility as councillors, and we can't accept it. It does deserve to be abandoned and be voted no tonight.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Aiken. I will note for balance sake that whilst you do raise some valid points, the submissions of questions and the timeframes which officers can find that information is a different process to finding information at large in this, but many of your points are well noted and well made. Councillor Contel.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, those of us that have been around for some time have had quite a few flood overlay reports put to us, and to the layperson they are extremely confusing, and this one is no different to that, other than it may be a little more confusing. There's been quite a few people that have contacted us, all us councillors, and there's been further doubt put in my mind about tonight's report after listening to the questions here this evening again. One, there's so much uncertainty around it. What concerns me is that there's obviously some extremely educated people looking at this that have put a lot of time, not educated, I should say intelligent people that have put time into trying to understand the report and the maps, and even they, with all the time that they've put into it, still cannot understand it and still can't work out where their properties are. And if you have a look at some of those maps that are in the report, they are extremely confusing. They don't understand, there's still people that do not understand why the amendment's necessary. They don't understand what impact it may or may not have on their properties and their livelihoods going forward. And to put this to the next level today, without answering and addressing those concerns for the community, is only going to put further undue and unnecessary anguish, mental stress and fear into that community. I understand that we want to move this forward, but the community doesn't understand it enough yet, and it's too significant an item to just rubber stamp here tonight to go to the next level and for us to suggest, don't worry, we'll address those concerns later on. If we haven't addressed them today, up till today, then there's less incentive for us to do it once it goes to the next level. So I will find it extremely difficult to support the report that's been put to us tonight as it has been put, particularly given the feedback and the engagement that the community has had, at least with me as a councillor, and what I've heard once again here tonight, as I heard at the Lara Community Centre when we had our council meeting out in Lara several months back.
Councillor Contell. Councillor Maloney.
Thank you, Mayor Sullivan, and thank you to everyone who has written in and been part of that process. It has been arduous, and I do concur with my fellow councillors. On the 27th of September, we went out to the Lara Community Hall and had a bit of a chat about this contentious issue. And Councillor Aitken has mentioned that we have a responsibility to make informed decisions and also to have a duty of care to constituents. And at that meeting in September, I mentioned the Victorian legislation, the Rainmaking Control Act 1967. And I think a few people laughed in the crowd, but I think this is a really pertinent piece of legislation to really chime in about what grounds these kind of decisions, these overlays. Now, a flood overlay can assume that there would be a 1 in 100 year flood. If you can cloud seed and make rain any day you like, then that opens up a whole big can of worms, doesn't it? In the fact that the authority, as in the minister, has and it's all in the Act, all 12 pages of it, the authority to engage in cloud seeding acts that would lead to potentially massive floods. So I would be, again, inquiring, if you haven't done so already, with your minister or authorities, the Victorian government, maybe even with us, put in an FOI, and do something about this, because there are pieces to this puzzle that you don't know at this point in time. Now, if someone can authorise an individual to fly a plane and cloud seed over your house, just like they do in Dubai, in United Arab Emirates, they announce 2 days beforehand there's going to be some rain on Thursday, so take an umbrella when you get out. I highly encourage you to open your eyes and maybe ears and wake up to the fact that you are being thoroughly controlled by bodies who don't have your best interests at heart. Now, I'll take off my tinfoil hat and leave it to the rest of us. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Maloney. Any councillors care to comment? Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor. I do note that the camera has gone off and it's not recording at the moment, but I'll persist. Thank you to the...
Oh, hang on a second. Is the live stream still working?
Yes, it's just that you need to speak.
Roger that. Excellent. Please continue.
Thank you to all the members of Lara that contacted me over the last few days with your phone calls and emails. It's always good to hear the community. I certainly pride myself on voting for my community. That's what I try and do as much as I can. And I think there's probably a bit too much misinformation with regard to what's in and what's out. The maps, yeah, they are confusing. I've jumped on Google Maps to have a look a bit better, certainly with regard to Lakeside Boulevard. And for us to get noticed such late today, I can't read my emails during the day because I've got a full-time job as well. So I didn't know that until tonight when I came in. So I'm certainly in favour of what Councillor Contell and Councillor Aitken said, and I won't be supporting this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Any other councillors? For Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a difficult one. I thought I'd come into the chamber with my mind made up, and you hear members of the public and the question time. But I'm still going to stick with what I believe in relation to this. I think we have a responsibility to this area and to the residents, and I acknowledge the uncertainty and the nervousness, but I think the responsibility is of this overlay, is the intention of it, is to protect the area from potentially flood prone. There's certainly many Geelong suburbs where this overlay exists, and I'm sure it would have been perfect when it was introduced in those areas as well. It's been prepared by expert consultants, and I do acknowledge that the maps are difficult to read, but I think we have to push forward with it. We have an independent panel that can be referred to, so I'll be supporting this recommendation.
Councillor Murray. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also will be supporting the recommendation on the basis that this is not the last discussion we're going to have on this particular topic. Clearly, the request for the Minister of Planning to appoint an independent panel is a process that takes some time and has considerable input from officers from community. We then have an additional 12 months to process the amendment to avoid amendment lapsing, which is fine. But the opportunity is still there for considerable discussion to take place and for options to be explored. So this is not a final decision this evening by any means. We've seen many items go to independent panels, and they will make a recommendation based on what evidence they accept from council officers, from government officials, from the community, and they'll make a recommendation. And then I think as a council we may be able to make a more informed decision on exactly what an end result may look like. Thank you.
Councillor Harwood. I will throw to Councillor Cabell, who reserved her right.
Mr. Mayor, I note that this matter has been before Council 4 times and note the significant concerns that have been raised tonight with at least 5 submitters. I'm also obviously aware of the issues that Councillor Aitken has raised. It's pretty clear that there's some significant errors and concerns remain, so I'm supportive of Councillor Aitken's request that we don't support this amendment.
Councillor Mason to close.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also understand that there's been this hasn't been a seamless process, and there has been ongoing confusion, despite there being opportunities for discussion over a long period of time. I'd like to point out also that really I think that it's in the best interests that we do proceed with this amendment, where this does support orderly planning and development. It is usual, if there are unresolved problems, we do have the capacity then to refer to an independent panel. In this case, it's a process anyway. So the independent panel is an opportunity, especially if there is concern about decisions made at the council level. Here is an independent an opportunity for an independent panel to provide its views. Then it will come back to this council again. So I'd like to see this progress. We need to provide certainty to the community that we are working within the limits of scientific knowledge, and our duty to the greater good of the whole community for us to go ahead with this. And if there are questions that have sound, that are based on sound research and thought, they will be uncovered by the independent panel. So I put it to you that we accept the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. With that, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? The motion is not carried. Moving on to item 3, Fair Play Strategy, Sports Lighting Policy Review Update. I'll now wait until Councillor Grisbeck rejoins the meeting. Yep. All right, I'm just getting advice that we do need to have a path forward, some direction on this item, so I'm just going to confer with the team as to what that may look like. One moment. If we could have Councillor Grisbeck not join us just yet. Apologies for those live streaming still in the audience. We're just getting this sorted. Okay. As you can see, the item we've just spoken on is referring to the Lara section of what is a much larger collation of floodplain studies, as Councillor Mason has mentioned, of all sort of different areas within our municipality. Now, we can't just have this recommendation fail because it leaves a lack of direction for the other collated studies which have been done, which are ready to be progressed to the state. So if council group does not wish the Lara portion to progress, we need that to be a motion that separates that out and allows the rest of the wider study to progress to ministerial level. So if there was a councillor of a mind to move a motion, it will be along the lines that council, having further considered submissions to amendment C339 GGE, flood zones and overlays, resolves to abandon the part of the amendment which relates to the Lara flood study properties and refer remaining submissions to an independent panel. That removes Lara from the section of other floodplain and zone studies which need to be progressed. I'm happy to accept if there's any questions, but Councillor.
Through the chair to the Director of Planning, I actually requested that as the process, and Gareth actually rejected that previously. So why, because the motion's now been lost, we're now reconsidering that. I'm happy to actually publicly show my emails where I actually requested what's been put before the council tonight. So I actually don't understand why, in a governance sense, that was rejected previously, and now that the motion's been lost, that it's actually been put forward as a proposal to rescue it.
I understand you may have concerns. I understand you may have concerns. However, we need a way forward this evening on this item right in front of us. Councillor Harwood.
Mr Mayor, just in relation to a potential abandonment, what does that mean for future discussion? Should the times change, and where would that leave the actual flood zone study of Lara.
I'll put that to Gareth Smith. Or planning.
I'll let Peter Smith, Strategic Coordinator, actually does all of our planning scheme amendments, refer what would the next step look like if there was another step for the flood study in Lara.
Yeah, just in answer to Councillor Howard's question, if it's abandoned, that's the end of the planning scheme amendment. But you can abandon parts of an amendment. It's quite valid under the Planning and Environment Act to abandon a part and allow the other part to continue through the process. So the councils have got two choices. Ideally, you either abandon the whole thing or you just abandon the part that relates to Lara and allow the other submissions, which I think there's about 40 or so, to continue onto a planning panel.
I guess my question relates to more about the future. When times always change, because it's been abandoned this evening, what, if any, avenues would council officers in the future have to actually potentially bring the matter back for further discussion or review?
Yeah, that would require a new planning scheme amendment, and effectively, you wouldn't just necessarily put out the same thing on exhibition. You'd probably review it and revise it and then go through the process again. But you basically have to go back to the start.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cantel?
Yeah, I'm really nervous what we're doing here. It's now on the run. And is there an option to defer? I don't want to just keep deferring reports, but this now, I can't understand how we get to a council meeting when we've been talking about this item at length for months. We always knew that a decision like this could be taken, yes, yet we haven't been given advice to suggest if this occurs, this is what will be the mechanisms following that. So now, on the run, we're trying to establish what we do because we've voted against the report. I would prefer to defer. We discuss these options and we come back to the chamber with what we actually want to occur. That's my preference, because I don't feel comfortable now voting on something different that's going to come in front of us. I don't know what the ramifications of that are.
No, that's well noted. It's something we definitely must consider. Deputy American?
It's actually not. Our governance local law doesn't allow us to actually defer a motion after we've voted on it. And in fact, the public has left tonight because they actually believe that the council rejected and abandoned the amendment. So there's some major conflicts that are actually occurring at the present time here. I mean, what we have to adhere to is our governance rules, and our governance rules don't allow us what is being suggested. No one foreshadowed an alternative if it was to be lost, which is a mechanism that is in place for any councillor to be able to present that under our meeting procedures and governance laws. No one did that. The motion was lost, and now we're actually saying, well, let's not accept that motion that the public has actually witnessed, and let's look at alternatives. I'm really concerned about that. You're actually asking us to do something that is not within our responsibilities, and in fact could be breach of the Local Government Act because we're not following our governance procedures.
Murray?
Just to clarify, so this amendment, C339GGE, also covers Lower Barwon Moorabool rivers. Is that correct?
It's a large area, yes.
And part of the Bellarine Peninsula Coast 2015. So now that this is abandoned, do we just, those flood studies that I've just mentioned are abandoned at the same time?
Previous resolutions supported them going to panel. So, and then what we've suggested though is to give clarity in a resolution here is how it's been drafted for the abandonment. It actually still refers those two. So it honours the previous decision of a council to continue that through, and the Lara aspect is the only part that's abandoned and wouldn't go to the panel, which is why we'd suggested an alternate res to help clarify that. Yeah.
And just on that point, could a further report be brought to council at a coming council meeting that makes note to progress those other separate components of this amendment?
I think technically it's been done previously when council essentially some degree separated, I guess, Lara out. The advice for my recollection was we'd advised in the past, we could have progressed that as a standalone, and we decide as officers we reckon to hold, so we go to panel once. rather than separating them out.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Aiken.
I don't want to give free legal advice and governance advice to the council, but what actually, the only option that's available is that at the next council meeting we rescind the vote, and at that particular meeting you put up an alternative recommendation. That is actually the only governance principle. I'm really disappointed we're not actually getting proper advice as a council group on that. That is when you pass a resolution, you cannot backtrack it. You can rescind it, and the way you rescind it is actually at a motion at a future council meeting, and you can rescind if the motion is not acted upon. Now, the motion is being said that we abandon it, so it's not being acted upon if we rescission motion comes to the next council meeting and a recommendation comes, if it is, to proceed with the non-LARA components of the amendment strategy. I'm disappointed that it's up to me as a councillor to be giving advice to the organisation, because that's exactly what is the only option that is available.
Councillor Murray.
Just on that point, it has to be rescinded, I think, within 48 hours of this council meeting. Not the next council meeting.
See clarification on that, because there are multiple trigger points along that. Yeah, we'll call a 10-minute recess for this meeting. We'll refer in 10. Thank you. Sorry, the meeting is adjourned at 8:27 p.m. Councillors, will please meet out the back. All right, thank you, everybody. We've just been in discussion, and we're just getting some words put together for the screen. I thank everybody for your patience. So we've come to progress the item that we've just discussed, which was Amendment C339GGEE. Now, we're voting not to adopt the LARA overlay, maps and submissions. A vote to not adopt is not a vote to abandon. It leaves the work and the item currently in a slight limbo status. So as a council, we need to give direction to officers on how to progress. I will note that Amendment C339GGEE is larger than just the LARA portion of this amendment. As noted, there's been multiple other areas which have council directions or decisions on for multiple years past, which are sitting there ready to progress for ministerial approval. The LARA part is just one section of this. So to give direction for LARA and the remaining components of C339GGE, we must give direction to officers, which we have in the form of the words on the screen behind us. And that is a motion that Council, having further considered submissions to Amendment C339GGEE, flood zones and overlays, resolves to abandon the part of the amendment which relates to the LARA flood study properties and refer the remaining submissions to an independent panel. Does any member of council wish to move this? Councillor Mason. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Harwood. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the best way forward for us now, and it's a good solution in the interests of all. We have spent years working on some of these overlays, such as in Barwon Heads, Ocean Grove, Port Arlington, Moolap, Corio, Newtown, Highton, Belmont and Wandana Heights. We want these ones to progress. There is already council direction to do so. This only reaffirms that. In addition, we also give great clarity now to the meeting tonight, and that we desire to abandon the LARA flood study overlays as was intended tonight. We now abandon that.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just concur with Councillor Mason's comments that we've listened to the community on this occasion, and they've been quite resolute in what they're seeking, or certainly what we've heard that they're seeking. And as stated, there are a number of other studies underway throughout the whole region of Geelong that need to be progressed, and so I'm supporting the motion as it stands at the moment, which will resolve to abandon the amendment which relates to the LARA flood study, and it'll be an interesting discussion for the future, I'd suggest.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harwood. I will add that what we have now is not a reconsideration of positions that have been made up until this point. It is about finding a proper governance way forwards. This does not change what was happening on the vote on LARA, nor does it change any of the other subsections, which Councillor Mason pointed out. The intent of all those areas remains the same. This is just a motion which progresses in the appropriate direction. Any other councillors wish to make comment? Deputy Mayor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Look, I thank the council group for excluding the LARA flood study properties. all nearly 7,000 of them, or 5,000 and something after you took out the 2,300 and the other 700, so thank you for that. I just remind the council group there was still objections to the other areas of the overlay, and I hope that, what happens tonight doesn't actually cause a legal challenge for the council group, for those people that actually did object to the other areas. It's nice to say that the other areas, we just want to get on with it and do it and send it to the independent panel, but we have to respect that the community has objected in that area as well too. They may not have objected in the numbers that Lara did, but it certainly should be acknowledged and considered. I will support the motion that's presented for us, because I think we have to actually show unity behind this. I am uncomfortable with the process and the manner in which it's been conducted tonight, and we have been promised that there will be a detailed review by the organisation to try to avoid this confusion for the council group, the officer group and the community as well too. Our responsibility is to make informed decisions and correct decisions, and we can only do that with the most professional and appropriate advice, both planning advice and governance advice, which is clearly the case with what's been presented to us tonight.
Deputy Mayor Aiken, any councillors wish to comment?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I'm not comfortable with the process that we've just gone through. We sat here as a council, we voted on a report, we gave the council direction on what our preferred approach would be. Then we obviously weren't comfortable with that. We've gone to the back of the council chambers to discuss how we change that direction, and then after 10 minutes come out here and take a different decision. In my time on council, we've never done that before. I find it extraordinary, actually. And so I can't support what's been put forward tonight, Mr Mayor. We already made a decision on this matter, and that's what council should be doing, is following the process that we went through in the chamber with the initial vote.
Thank you, Councillor Contel. No other councillors comment? Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The time I've been on council, I don't think I've ever seen this. I am uncomfortable with it, but the legal advice we're given is all we can do in 10 minutes. And I guess this gives the people of Lara some certainty that it has been abandoned and it won't be included as part of Amendment C339GGEE. So for the Lara people watching online and in the audience still, it won't be included in the flood zone and overlay. But the other ones in Finesford and the Bellarine will go ahead as planned. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson. Councillor Murray.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this motion as well. It's probably a little bit unfortunate that the Lower Barwon and the Moorabool River study and the Bellarine Peninsula Coast study have gone down a little bit with the Lara being involved. So this is about separating them out. So Lara's lost, and this is about proceeding with the others. So I'm supportive of this motion.
Thank you. No other councillors wish to comment? Nobody, throw back to Councillor Mason to finish.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I hear all the comments, and thanks to the councillors for their inputs and alerting us to their concerns. I'd just like to add that what we did tonight, there were some unintended consequences. And what we're doing now is reiterating a decision that was made some years ago or in the past, referring to the Bellarine and other places. So it's just giving us that clarity, and in the meantime we're abandoning for the immediate time the Lara flood study. So I commend the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. To the vote, all those in favour? Thank you. All those against? The item is carried. Item number 2 is now concluded. We'll be moving on to item 3, and we'll be waiting for Councillor Grisbeck to rejoin the meeting. Back, Councillor Grisbeck, can you hear us all right? Perfect, thank you. We have item 3 before us right now, Fair Play Strategy, Sports Lighting Policy Review Update. Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to put forward a deferral of this item. And would you like me to speak to the deferral, Mr. Mayor?
If I can get you a seconder. Councillor Nelson, thank you. Councillor Grisbeck, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel that before we either note this or make any recommendations on the fair play strategy regarding the lighting, that there are some further things to consider around the fair play strategy itself. And so I'd like to defer this item.
Motion to defer to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? The item is deferred. Item number 4, Mercer and Joangham Streetscape Master Plan.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask for a deferral on this matter as well.
One moment, do you have a seconder? Councillor Cadwell? Councillor Contell?
I didn't think you needed to speak to deferral.
You can if you like. Just
I'm comfortable for it just to be deferred.
Thank you.
Put to the vote.
All right. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? The item is deferred. You are quite correct. We don't need to speak against deferrals. However, we may have the slight opportunity. It's just so the community have slight insight into what we're doing. Item number 5, Armstrong Creek Library Proposed Naming Report. Item number 5. Councillor Nelson?
I'd like to move a deferral. The reason for my request is...
Hang on one second, we just need a seconder first. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Maloney, thank you. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see it's starting to get late. I'd like to move a deferral due to ambiguous community consultation. I just want to make it a bit more clear and bring the community with us. I think it's such a major project that we need to bring the community with us, and I think 8 submissions is just not enough.
Right. Thank you very much. All right, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour of deferral? Thank you. All those against? All right, that's deferred. Item number 6, Armstrong Creek West Community Hub Proposed Naming Report.
I'd like to request a deferral of this too. I feel like it's...
One second, all right. Just got to call for a seconder. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Cadwell? Councillor Maloney?
Similarly to Councillor Nelson's highlighting that there has been very little in the way of community responses on our Have Your Say. I'd like to request a deferral for this so that we can garner more responses. Thank you.
Yep. All righty. I'll put the motion to defer up. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? Deferral is carried. Item number 7, hire of window turning and screening for green organics processing. Moved by Councillor Harwood, seconded by Councillor Murray. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not seeking a deferral on this one. We'll try and get through it. This is a process where council's looking to award a contract for the hire of windrow turning and screening for green organics processing. The city that runs the organics processing facility to turn household green waste into reusable compost. This is primarily done out at our Aniki area, at the Jelna property. The green waste is sorted at a transfer station and hauled out to the processing facility. So the waste is mulched, screened and reduced in size and weight, reduce the size of the waste and increase the rate of the composting. We turn over around about 35 tonnes of green waste annually. We could do, well, yes, we do, that's what we turn over. We actually have substantially more than 35,000 tonnes, particularly in wetter years. And unfortunately, we need to actually have alternative processes for that waste. But what we're doing here is the current contract expires. So we've had an open tender process to find a suitable contractor to provide wet hire, as well as an option for the dry hire and training of city staff if it is one day required. So quite simply, it's about the further development we have out there to deal with the green waste. So based on the tender's experience, expertise and value for money and proposed equipment, the tender evaluation panel recommended that Green Care Mulching be awarded the contract for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. Councillor Murray.
I've got nothing further to add, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to comment? If not, I'll throw it back to Councillor Howard to close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, only comment I'll make...
Mr Mayor, sorry.
Apologies, I didn't look over my shoulder. My mistake. Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question is directed to the CEO here. Has the ASIC search for the directors of this company been emailed to the councillors to ensure there's no conflict?
Yes, I understand that's occurred.
All right. And hopefully someone can direct me to that because I haven't seen it. Thank you.
Councillor Grisbeck. Councillor Howard.
Mr Mayor, the only final comment I'll make is, as I've been stating in relation to our capacity for our green waste, which is a huge issue for the region, and I'll again say that we need to work diligently to be able to increase our capacity to deal with the green waste and not be hauling green waste in and around regional areas at a considerable cost to the council. So I just put that back on the record again that it's a critical area, it is expensive, and we need to make sure that our processing capacity is increased. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? Thank you. The item is carried. Item number 8, proposed sale of land part Connections Park, Corio. Moved by Councillor Grisbeck, seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken. Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If I could indulge Councillor Aiken to move this particular matter, I'll say mostly about it because I don't have the paperwork in front of me that my computer has died, Mr Mayor.
All right, I will reshape that. I'll call for a mover and I'll get Deputy Mayor Aiken to move it, and Councillor Grisbeck, you still wish to second it? Thank you. All right, Deputy Mayor Aiken.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Luckily, I can talk off the cuff.
Very lucky.
For a particular motion. But look, this one actually is a bit of a passion for Kylie and I. Roseville actually is a unique part of the northern suburbs. About 2.5 years ago, we actually decided to sell the eastern part of public open space, and this proposal tonight is actually to sell a linking part between western area of open space and that area that we have previously sold. The area is going through rejuvenation. School has closed. It has been purchased by a private developer, the school site, and this proposal that's before us tonight will consolidate and actually make some really good planning outcomes for that particular area. Something that Kylie and I are really conscious of and we wish to protect. When we made our decision in 2.5 years ago to sell the eastern part of the open public space, we asked for a commitment from this council group to undertake a master plan for the remaining land. That did not occur, and we were really disappointed, Kylie and I, that a clear direction from the council group, it certainly wasn't ignored, but it wasn't seen as a priority against other master plans that the council was undertaking. And if you have a look at the fourth part of the recommendation tonight, it actually commits that, note, if the sale of the land proceeds, community engagement will be undertaken to determine how the remaining reserve, known as Connection Park West, will be improved and used. And that's exactly what the community out there is asking for. They're committed that if you do sell public open space for a broader community benefit, which is what's happening here, that they do get some benefit themselves. And there's simple things they're asking for to activate West Connect Park, which is they want a basketball backboard so they can play basketball. They want a community garden so they can actually create food and teach each other about other food sources in that local community. And they want some activations with some more barbecues and shelters that exist in that area as well too. So Kylie and I strongly support the sale, again, for the second time for a new part, as long as the community gets some benefit from that site location. So hopefully it's second time lucky, Councillor Grisbeck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Aiken, for stepping in. My notes have now come back. But On top of what you have already said, Councillor Aiken, I think the pedestrian access was a real call out for the community in this part of the development that could happen here. I think what they're really important is, as Councillor Aiken has said, is how their park can be improved. They want to get access to the same kinds of things that the rest of Geelong has, like barbecues, like a basketball court, and they're not extravagant things. They are just general community things which we think should be located here. The other opportunity is the community engagement, and I think that's exactly what Councillor Aiken had said we thought would happen last time. Hopefully it will happen this time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other councillors wish to comment? Councillor Harwood.
I certainly support the item. I just need to make a quick comment. I just need to be careful, I think, sometimes when we say if we're selling land in a particular area that the funds will go back into that particular area. We need to be very cognizant of what we've already have in our projects and where our priorities lie. So I'm absolutely supportive of some of the items that have been mentioned, but we just need to be careful that just because a particular parcel of land is sold in an area, that those particular funds that are derived go back into that particular area as such. So they actually go back into the consolidated revenue for the whole region.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Noted. That's all. I'll go back to Deputy Mayor Aiken to close.
Nothing further to add, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? The item is carried. Item number 9, Sustainability Performance Report, June 22. Moved by Councillor Mason, seconded by Councillor Murray. Councillor Mason.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This report is only to be noted and represents our commitment to annual reporting to continually improve its performance by tracking progress relating to economic sustainability, social sustainability and environmental sustainability. This also means that we have strengthened our approach to issues including climate change and waste, increasing population growth and threats to biodiversity. So the report tracks progress on the short, medium and long-term initiatives within our sustainability framework, excuse me, our framework action plan 20 to 22 to June 22. Through transparently and recurrently reporting publicly, measurable indicators and goals can be tracked and monitored by all, by us and by the public. So I'd also like to acknowledge the valuable contribution of our Sustainability Advisory Committee, made up of a group of 12 skilled members of our community, Councillors Asher and Maloney, and the many dedicated officers. So quickly, of the 66 actions within the action plan, the majority were either on track, 47%, or complete, 45%. Based on trend data, 10 indicators are currently trending towards success. 7 are trending away from success, and 2 indicators only had a baseline data, and 4 didn't have any data at all because they were new. This report provides a progress update on sustainability targets, global reporting initiative indicators, as well as actions listed in the action plan, as I just said. So I'll leave a lot of the good news to Councillor Murray. I'm sure there really is a lot of good news, but I just want to concentrate for a moment on areas where we're struggling to achieve our goals. And of course, COVID had affected some of these indicators, and we're likely to get back onto a normal trajectory. So the actions that we do have to be mindful of and are off track, and these aren't all of them, but these are typical. We've not met the target of 50% journeys to work made by public transport, cycling or walking. We are diverting less waste from landfill. It's decreased from 54% to 53% over the last financial year. Even though we're making great strides in composting green waste, not enough, as Councillor Harwood said, and the recycling tonnage, despite a growing population, despite a growing population. We're only halfway to our 20% target of using water from alternative sources. The share of social housing in the community is not keeping pace with the overall growth in dwellings. Less of our adult community is self-rating their health as very good or excellent. That's fewer than 2017. However, this result is still higher than the last reported Victorian average. So even though we're slipping in Geelong, the state's slipped further. So I'll leave that for now. I just wanted to put it on record things that we do have to watch, and I'll leave it to other councillors to discuss further.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mason. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Mason for leaving me the highlights, which I'm most grateful for. And the highlights for this sustainability performance report include generating zero emissions through the city's electricity usage after entering into a 10-year contract with Victorian Energy Collaboration to source renewable energy, planning for the city to retain and protect more than 108 hectares of additional hectares of natural habitat, which is underway in the northern western growth areas, delivering 3 major shared trail projects in East Geelong, Corio and Barwon Heads, completing the move to the city's new civic precinct, Wirriki Nial, one of the few Australian buildings to utilise mass-engineered timber. And of course it's built to the 6-star Green Star and 5-star NABERS energy rating. And establishing the climate partnership grants which provide co-design and financial support for community-led projects and activities that help achieve net zero emissions. Included in the report is a strong local economy for job opportunities for all, which was identified as one of the community's top priorities during the development of our Community Plan 21-22. However, this wasn't included in the initial development of the sustainability framework it is now. I just note this is to the end of June 2022. Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any councillors wish to comment? Councillor Maloney.
Thanks, Mayor Sullivan. Just very quickly, as the, I guess, outgoing Deputy Chair of this portfolio, as of the next 2 items, potentially, if we pass it, I wanted to highlight that the time that I've spent on this portfolio has been very nourishing and informative for me, and it's also been wonderful working with the community groups, especially the Sustainability Advisory Committee that feeds into this report, who have informed us of all the nuances and brilliant ideas that we have floating around in our community. And we are really blessed to have those individuals who are really high calibre working in the green spaces. I also wanted to draw our attention to the some of the things that were off track, not to be a stick in the mud, but some of the things that are off track on this report are off track because of external forces. For example, 50% of work journeys in the municipality, we're hoping to make them walking or public transport or cycling with near zero net emission. However, only 4.6% of journeys were recorded in 2021. So what does this mean? 2% via public transport. I think we perhaps all know the elephant in the room here is that public transport is at this point in Geelong not an ideal prospect for some people. They might feel unsafe to travel on public transport, and I've heard that from some constituents. So perhaps this is this method of transport is out of our control. It's residing with the state, but perhaps this is a really opportune time for us to start clanging some cymbals around and making a bit of a noise about how much we want public transport to reinvigorate our travels in and around our city, and we need the state to come on board to invoke that. I also wanted to commend the actions that are towards the 1 million new trees, although the data is not available, and I think that we perhaps need to put some of our budget money towards that if we are wanting to gain more tree canopy, as Jean Naldacoca mentioned aptly in the question time. But I do want to also commend that the community net zero emissions have gone down, and our community monitoring also has gained some new strength. And I think as it stands as a report, we have a lot of data collection issues that are few and far between, I suppose. It's very difficult to grab all this data in a timely manner and pull it into a report, but I want to commend the officers who have done so because this report is not only educational, which is part of what I think we do as council, it's very informative, and I'm really looking forward to seeing a whole bunch of green thumbs up on the next reports. Thank you.
Councillor Grisbeck, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with the previous councillors. The only thing I'd say is this is to June 2022, that's 9 months ago. So in terms of reporting, I get that it's a difficult report, but sustainability moves so quickly in this day and age, so 9 months till we get a report on what we did over 2 years ago is probably not quick enough. I also think, because we've got the community plan report coming up next, and that's to December, it's last December. So it can be done. It's just how quickly that can be done. So 9 months is a long time to change strategies or and I think to make those strategic decisions.
Fortunately, you just cut out towards the end there, Councillor Grisbeck, but I believe we captured most of what you're saying. Right, with that, I'm happy to throw to Councillor Mason to close.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I thank all the councillors for their inputs. Councillor Murray, and actually I'd like to make special note, Councillor Maloney, I don't know why I moved this while you had the portfolio there. I don't know how that happened, but you did a wonderful job filling in all the gaps. So I do commend again the Sustainability Advisory Committee and all of the officers that have worked on this. And really this report, I do hear what Councillor Grisbeck said as well. I had the same idea in my mind. 9 months should be a bit shorter in reporting time, and certainly if we use a report to help us keep our focus on what we're doing, we need to react in a more timely manner. But certainly we've got our mind on sustainability and the United Nations SDGs, and in the little bit of time left, I think there's a few other good things that we've been doing, such as working with others, partnerships and other councils, and collaborating with community groups. And just as I speak, we've got the UNESCO City of Design partners in town at the moment. Our social equity framework is been well developed, keeping our city employees safe and well with the development and implementation of organisational health, safety and wellbeing plan, and maintaining and implementing the 10-year financial plan, and continuing to ensure long-term organisational plans are fed into this financial plan and our risk appetite matrix. So on comes the good news, but we'll stop now. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. With that, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? The item is carried. Item number 10, our Community Plan Quarterly Report, December 2022. Moved by Councillor Contell, thank you, and seconded by Councillor Mason. Councillor Contell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, the report's asking Council to note the Community Plan Quarterly Report. Most would know that the quarterly report gives us a performance status on the outcomes and the priorities that Council is focusing on over a 4-year period. In the annual plan, we've committed to 64 actions. Of that, 44 are on track, so reasonable progress. 9 are complete, one of those being the development of the business events and Geelong marketing program that's designed and intended to attract new businesses to Geelong, so that's positive. There's 3 that have not been started. In the report, you'll note that they are commencing work with the community on the next innovative reconciliation plan, commencing planning for a new residential strategy for Central Geelong, which is equally very important, and develop a formal and centralised health, safety and wellbeing audit program. There are 4 also that are not on track. A couple of those are one, which is extremely important and a matter that we talk about often, and that being the development of an integrated transport plan. It comes up with so many matters that we talk about, and we've often asked whatever happened with the TNOP, and obviously an integrated transport strategy will help guide us with what we're going to do with walkability, rideability and public transport into the future. So that's really important that that gets going and gets back on track. The other one is stage 2 of the LED streetlight changeover. That's been delayed until August this year. So again, need to get that one on track. One that did not proceed, and it's one that Councillor Peter and I are not all that pleased about, which is the major annual live music program to support day and night economy. That was due to budget restraints. Through the arts, live entertainment and hospitality portfolio, we are working to try to recover that in this upcoming budget. So it's really important that that goes ahead. So some good progress, I guess, given that 44% are on track and another 9, close to 10% are completed, but still some more work to do on some of the pretty important priorities the Council's focusing on. But it is a 4-year plan, and so this is a status report on that. I'll leave it at that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Contell. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to continue with the 4 that were off track, there's another one that we need to keep our minds on, and that is constructing the Building Better Bike Connection Southern Link 2. There were a number of things that we've already completed, which we're very pleased about. We've commenced the detailed design of gender-neutral facilities in the Leopold Tennis Club, and I'm sure they're very pleased because they've been waiting for a long time for that. We've got also recommendations on how to deliver a safe and inclusive space for young people in Geelong. We've expanded our drop-in feeding support service to include the Bellarine. And once again, with the Bellarine, we've developed, to the pleasure of very many residents, the South East Bellarine Coastal Strategy. We are reviewing the delivery of city services, and that's a very good thing. And of course, it's going to give us a lot of things to think about setting our priorities. So all in all, we've, as Councillor Contell said, we've made a lot of achievements. One things that weren't mentioned, I don't want to be the bearer of bad tidings, but there are some things that did need improvement, such as the Live Well program, to ensure it's sustainable and meets the health and wellbeing needs of people over 55, and reviewing the local planning policy framework in Greater Geelong Planning Scheme to implement key strategies in that planning scheme. So I'll leave that to you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Mason. I'll open up commentary from the General Council Group. Is there any to be had? If not, I'll throw back to Councillor Contell to close.
Further, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you. We'll table the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? The item is carried. Now, item number 11 is councillor appointments to portfolios and committees. Now, I'm pleased to move this one, seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So what we have here is a report that asks Council to retire the existing portfolio structure and to adapt a new structure going forwards, a new streamlined structure that's in line with our council plan, our priorities, and really makes best use of available council law and officer time as well. So we're taking down from 20 portfolios to roughly to exactly 10, with specialised area for mayoral responsibility. And the duties of portfolios holders, just to reiterate as well, is to keep up to date with council proposals, issues and activities which are relevant within these portfolios, to act as council spokespersons on relevant portfolio matters, and to be a key point of contact for the community and stakeholders to engage with, and that really is a major point. There are definitely items which naturally are ward-based and the community knows who to go to. But if they want a specialised item of interest, then a portfolio holder and deputy are very, very useful in that area. And they are also to champion council's key priorities and decisions which are relevant to their portfolio, and of course come back to the council group and help educate us as well and discuss items of interest in those portfolios. So we have the list of attachments there, item 2 of who will be on what portfolio. It's a nice even balance there, and really I'm happy to throw over now to Deputy Mayor Aiken. Mayor Aiken?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, and I actually just want to concentrate on thanking the council group. Look, we're regularly, people make commentary about the council group and its governance practices and the way it actually operates. This is tangible evidence that the council is actually trying to do best practice in terms of our portfolio systems. I was just hastily looking at this was a report. It said the City of Greater Geelong has almost doubled its new council portfolios, dumping and rebounding all but 4 of the previous portfolios in a major shake-up. That was the Geelong Advertiser from December 2020. So what's actually happening? We're adhering to a governance principle, which is that you should rotate, you should change, you should continually review. And I want to congratulate the council group because it's very easy to stay in the portfolio areas of responsibility that you have a love for and a passion for, but the decision tonight is actually responding to the organisation. The organisation came to us and actually said, look, 28 portfolios is actually too unwieldy for the resources it's taking and the time and effort for the council group and the administration as well too. And we have properly responded to that by actually using our governance principle of sharing and changing and not becoming too operational in a particular area of responsibility. So I congratulate the council group in doing that because that's what you're endorsing tonight. And you're also helping the council organisation and administration by simplifying how the governance interaction actually works between us and the administration. So thank you to the council group to do that. And my final thank you is to Bithia Hartley. Bithia is in a new position at the City of Greater Geelong Strategy. Bithia led all the discussions that we've had about this particular area and helped work with the Mayor and myself of more recent time to actually try to deliver this governance structure that we're adopting tonight. So well done, councillors, and it's tangible evidence that we do respect our governance responsibilities and we do understand how it is important that we fulfil our duties as councillors. And my only final other comment is saying people may go, what's happened to Osborne House portfolio? It has become a special project. And I look forward to some announcements under Councillor Contal's leadership in the short time about that particular area. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Aiken. Any councillors wish to comment? Councillor Murray.
Just one matter. Is there a slight error in that Councillor Mason and Harwood in the Deputy Environment and Circular Economy? Can I just check on that?
Councillor Mason there as the councillor deputy.
That was the original. You got Councillor Jim down as 2 deputies there now, and Councillor Harwood's not 1.
True.
I think the original document had myself as chair and Councillor Harwood as deputy for that environment and circular economy.
Correct. I do recall. Are we happy to, I'm happy to have that slight changement in my original moving of this motion. Deputy Mayor Aiken? Absolutely. So that's a change of...
What was circulated, yeah.
That was circulated amongst the council group previously. So environment and circular economy portfolio. The deputy chair will not be Councillor Mason, but Councillor Harwood. It's a good pickup. Yep. Excellent.
So just to comment, and look, I think the Mayor and Deputy Mayor have done a great job in getting this together. I imagine it's a difficult task. So I think the outcome's pretty good. And I think it was Lucy, I'm just trying to think of her name, who first bought this before the staff last year at some stage. And of course Bithia and the others have gone with it. So it's look forward to the challenge of a new portfolio and a new, as Deputy Chair of another one. So yeah, bring it on.
Thank you. There's no other comments from other councillors. Councillor Quintel.
One comment. Some observers may note that the arts, live entertainment and hospitality portfolio is no longer its own portfolio, but I want to make sure that they are comfortable that the initiatives and the focus on that area will actually be sitting in creativity and culture, which will be chaired by Councillor Cadwell and Deputy Councillor Murray. And so we'll make sure that that does not get lost and that those initiatives around live music and live entertainment and our hospitality industries are captured within that new portfolio, which will be complemented by a number of other initiatives that's sitting under that as well.
I will close by saying there are some changes in there, but there are also some additions. For the mayoral duties, we have elevated the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander partnerships, which goes to show it's symbolic of how much we do value our relationships with our First Nations people within our community and wider as well. We do want to make that these relationships are incredibly significant and are worthy of the office of the mayor, whoever that may be at the time. And of course, the inclusion of Commonwealth Games as a mayoral duty as well, something incredibly important and vital for our region going forwards, and something that we also, the mayor would have direct line of sight over in that relationship. There's also the committees attached as well, which are in line. So with that, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? That is carried. Item number 12 is updates to instruments of delegation. Moved Councillor Cadwell, seconded Councillor Quintel. Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a purely procedural motion seeking to improve the transparency and alignment with current legislation, specifically the Local Government Act and the Planning and Environment Regulations Act, 2015. It's important because it ensures that Council has properly delegated powers, duties, functions in order to avoid any issues arising regarding the legality of a decision or action taken or made on behalf of the Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Quintel.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think there's any need for me to add anything further to that. Thank you.
Yeah, the councillors wish to comment? Not. Councillor Cadwell to close.
Mr. Mayor, I think I have nothing further.
Thank you. All right, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? That item is carried. That moves us on to section 3, record of informal meetings of councillors. Can I please have a mover for this record? Councillor Quintel, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Mason. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? That is carried. Section number 4 is planning delegations. Can I please have a mover for planning delegations? Harwood, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Mason. All those in favour? Thank you. All right, section number 5 is confidential. So for item 5.1, North Geelong Warriors, response to notice of motion. Can I please have a mover to move this into confidential? Moved Councillor Quintel, seconded Councillor Grisbeck. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? That's moved into confidential. 5.2, Council Business Report. Can I please have a mover into confidential? Councillor Harwood, thank you. Seconded Deputy Mayor Aiken. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? That's moved into confidential. Item number 5.3, Sierra Employment and Remuneration Committee. Can I please have a mover for that into confidential? Moved, I'll move that one actually. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Aiken. All those in favour to move that into the confidential? Thank you. All those against? That is moved. We are now to consider the remaining agenda items in our confidential section of the meeting. To do that, I need a mover and a seconder to close the meeting to the public so we can consider these items. Moved, Councillor Mason. Seconded, Councillor Nelson. All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? That item is carried. I would like to thank everybody in person who's still here. Thank you very much, and all those virtually as well who are watching online. And thank you everybody who has been within the gallery today, who attended, came into City Hall to ask their questions, to make their voices known. It's incredibly vital, and we do appreciate your participation. Thank you all. I'll call this to a close for confidential at 9:47 p.m.